The story unfolded with a sharp, unexpected dispute. The leader of the hero group, Nardo, suddenly announced the immediate exile of our character, Aerys. Stunned by the sudden turn of events, the heroes could not believe it and wondered, was this some kind of joke? But Nardo's fiery anger was not to be confused with cunning. He simply wanted Aerys to disappear from his sight immediately. People at the scene observed the fierce dispute and wondered what had happened. But they wisely kept their distance. They did not want to get involved in the conflict and quickly stepped back before things escalated. Nardo admitted that Aerys's enhancement magic was indeed useful, but he considered Aerys herself just a potion that could be easily replaced. He further insisted that the party did not need such a burden, overcome with uncontrollable rage. Nardo even accused Aerys of stealing experience points, since in this world, victory over monsters granted experience points that increased strength, and they were evenly divided among team members. Aerys realized that he was driven away simply because they wanted to gain more experience for themselves. When Joris tried to explain, Nardo paid no attention to his words, coldly declared the dismissal final, and rudely ordered him to leave. Other participants also stepped aside. It became clear he simply read the situation. Before finally leaving, Aerys asked once more, were they really satisfied that he was leaving the hero squad? But they almost called him persistent and were already glad that they would finally get rid of such ballast as him. He erased a part and moved on. He thought this did not need to be explained. It was clear the party relied on his magic for everything to work, but they rejected him without understanding. He always believed that sooner or later they would return to take him, with those worried faces, but now he decided not to return. Aerys joined the team of heroes to avenge the demon lord who took his family and to prevent new misfortunes, and outside the team his primary task was to put his life in order. Thoughts about the future pushed him. He decided to get an adventurer's license. Soon he found himself in front of the guild house and approached the receptionist, who kindly extended a helping hand. He was arrested and offered to become an adventurer. She instantly looked at the clock and said he came just in time for the exam, then asked how he wanted to proceed. He replied that, if possible, he would like to take the exam immediately. She instantly handed him a registration form to fill out, and immediately wrote his name and profession. He is a wizard who supports comrades with enhancement magic. This skill has been with him since birth. Did she scan the completed form? She hesitantly asked if he was from the hero team. Aerys involuntarily thought how quickly she recognized him just by his name and job. He perfectly understood. If they found out about his exclusion from the hero party, it would become a problem. Quickly orienting himself, Aerys sharply denied any connection. It was just a common name, and he was in no way related to the hero team. Then he, with cunning in his voice, asked what would be on the exam to divert her attention. She sighed and explained there were only 4 tests. A magic power test, a target shooting test, a practical test, and the final test. She explained everything in detail. He had to pass all 4. He was allowed to try as many times as he wanted and was wished good luck. She led him to the place where the test was to begin. At first, she led him to a room created specifically for testing magical power. The first measurement of Aerys's magical power after joining the team of heroes had come, and he was confident he would manage. In the room, on a stand that stood atop a pedestal, lay a single polished crystal neatly, and she placed her hand on it. She showed how the test was conducted. A touch to the crystal absorbed magic and showed the level of its power. Brighter glow meant stronger magical power, dimmer weaker. When the crystal barely glowed from her touch, Aerys asked about the passing score. She replied that for her level of magical power it was not easy, but if it glowed a little brighter, it would be considered successful. She smiled and noticed that, even without being an adventurer, she could handle a decent amount of magic, implying that for him it should not be too difficult. Aerys placed his hand on the crystal and decided to try anyway. As soon as he touched the surface, it instantly lit up with a dazzling light. The receptionist was momentarily blinded. Aerys decided that the bright light was a sign that he had passed the test. He turned around to ask the receptionist about the results. Suddenly, her legs gave way and she fell, and he immediately thought he might have messed something up. She instantly apologized for her unexpected outburst and admitted that she had never seen anything like it before. Gathering her thoughts, she once again deeply focused on Aerys's magic. And as he relentlessly directed his power into the crystal began to heat up so much that it became unbearable. He asked, would the crystal withstand this strain or would it crack? She calmly assured him that it was strong and added that she had never heard of such a thing. They were overwhelmed with great surprise. The crystal began to noticeably crack. Then instantly it split into 2 parts. Seeing this, Aerys pondered, what could this mean? the receptionist fell to the floor again. Trembling, she quietly spoke. She could not believe how it happened. The crystal was supposed to withstand even rank S magic, and she suspected that Aerys really was from the hero's party. But he immediately dismissed her suspicion. It was obvious a wizard from the hero's party would not strive to become an adventurer. He extended his hand to her, helped her up, and most importantly, inquired about the test results. She assured him that he definitely passed the test. He sincerely apologized for the inconvenience caused, and with sadness in his voice, admitted that due to the broken crystal, further tests were currently impossible. But she felt that it was a real surprise, and the guild should have anticipated such a result in advance when she began examining the broken crystal. She accidentally scratched her hand and started bleeding. Aerys immediately took her hand and said that it was quite an unspectacular injury. He offered to heal her wound with his magic. The injury instantly healed, and she was amazed that Aerys not only possessed magic but could also heal. Usually, everyone thought that mages simply provided enhancements for attack or defense, and almost no one guessed that it actually meant granting certain properties. Without hesitation, he asked if there was a problem with him, as a mage, using healing magic, and she did not object. He even offered to fix the crystal. She was surprised and asked if it was really possible when he began pouring his healing magic into the cracked crystal. The crystal began to noticeably recover. Soon it seemed like new, and seeing this, she thanked him. Meanwhile, Aerys quietly admitted that initially this damage happened because of him. Then he clarified if the next test was a practical shooting test, and she confirmed. He was ordered to strike the target with magic or a sword, and his evaluation would depend on the strength of the attack. Standing before the next evaluation spot, the receptionist assured that thanks to Aerys's magical power, the next shooting training would be easy, and Aerys, as an enchantment mage, asked her not to expect too much from him. He kept repeating that his role was to be support. Deep down, he believed that he could still pass this test. Soon she took him to the training ground. On the ground nearby lay several straw mannequins. She energetically demonstrated the task, created a magic sphere, struck the target with it, and explained to him that the target would glow depending on the strength of the attack. To pass, he had to exceed his current attack power, and only the strongest of 3 attempts was considered. She also allowed, for this trial he could use either a sword or magic. He briefly thought that he could wield the sword with the help of enhancement magic, but if he chose magic, the tools would be completely unnecessary to him. Nevertheless, he said that either option would do, but magic was more convenient, so he decided to act accordingly, and the receptionist, seeing how easily he chose, was a little surprised before agreeing. He chose Fireball, a simple spell for beginners, accessible to many support roles. Having only 3 chances, he decided to take a risk to use the initial spell from the very first attempt. And for the second, he planned to score high by resorting to a charm spell, keeping the plan in mind. He formed too large a ball of fire and hurled it toward the target. He noted even a fireball has its limits, but as soon as he turned around, he barely contained his surprise upon seeing the stunned reaction of the receptionist. She called his abilities insane and said she was blinded for a moment, and Aerys calmly added that he hadn't even tried his hardest. She froze in even greater surprise when she found out that he hadn't even used all his strength. As soon as the fog from the previous strike dissipated, the receptionist stood stunned. The damage was shocking. Not only was the target dummy destroyed, but the explosion also affected the neighboring ones. Aerys asked if the dummies were supposed to break, but immediately answered herself. No, although they were now clearly broken, she still considered the test passed. And regarding the last 2 shots, she told him not to continue. He had already easily passed the evaluation. She pointed to the damaged arena and firmly said that with such destruction, they could not continue further. Without saying a word, Aerys cast healing magic. In a moment, the destroyed area was healed. All the dummies he had broken returned to their places, and she instantly felt, although they could now continue the exams, there was no need. Eventually, Aerys passed the shooting test with a single fireball. The next trial was a practical exam, where he, as the examiner, had to duel one-on-one with a rank C participant. Only those who passed this stage were allowed to the final exam. Rank E novices gradually rose to D and C, taking on guild tasks and gaining practical experience, while travelers of rank C and above were already considered established. Therefore, for the practical exam, the risk had to be approved by the examiner, a person who was like a real adventurer themselves. When he entered the arena, he immediately noticed he was not the only candidate. There were many others here, also for the exam. The receptionist said with mild surprise that people of Aerys' caliber rarely pass all exams in one day. On the other hand, the examiner Chris stood before the candidates and with mild astonishment noticed that they were much younger than him. He shyly apologized for their weight and said that in the practical exam he would become their opponent. He explained that they needed to choose a fighting style for the dual sword or magic. The duel would end when one side could no longer fight or surrendered, and based on how the duel went, it would be decided whether they passed or failed. Then he, confident in himself, told them to approach him with a clear intention to win. Aerys raised his hand and asked how the points would be counted. Their success depended on how the tools worked. Chris explained that the exam simulated real requests and actually tested whether the candidates could pass the final exam. They looked closely at basic compatibility, crisis management skills, and overall ability to assess the situation. Hearing this, Aerys involuntarily thought that the evaluation criteria seemed too vague. Although it was not the answer he wanted, he still decided to move on and inquired whether he would pass if he defeated Chris. Chris smiled boldly and said that he would definitely pass if he proved he could. He also noted, when he won with guarantee a pass, he never lost to any contender who made such a statement. Hearing this, Aerys felt that even in a support role he was a full-fledged member of the hero squad, and although the fight would be tough, he was confident he would not lose. The thought that victory would open a passage for him calmed his heart. Then Chris called the first candidate in line and invited her to step forward and challenge him. The girl stepped forward, and Aerys sighed deeply with relief having avoided the first clash. He finally had time to carefully think through his strategy. When the fight began, the girl actively used her magical skills, and Aerys thought that for her age the future looked bright. While Chris was preparing, Aerys noticed that he had read her magical flow and instantly skillfully redirected the attack. Chris rushed at the candidate at full speed. The girl noticeably flinched. This made Aerys think perhaps she had anticipated this complete failure. She was more skilled than her peers, but it seemed pride had let her down. In a moment, Chris loomed over her neck, and she immediately surrendered. Chris assessed her skills and said that the attack was strong, but after an unsuccessful attempt to deliver a preemptive strike, she suddenly found herself completely unprepared for what happened next. Chris said sadly, with such a skill level she does not deserve to pass. He advised her to try again next time, but only after she truly improves her skills, and when tears welled up, she had to leave the hall. After her, Aerys came on stage. Just as Chris checked the form, he was filled with surprise. A mag amplifier was taking the exam before him. Aerys also knew that amplification mages were extremely rare among ordinary adventurers. Heavenly positions were usually very narrow, mostly becoming either wizards or swordsmen. There were rare roles: amplification mages, healers, and even unique professions specializing in certain skills. Chris was not ashamed to think aloud. Does an amplification mage really have any practical use? And Aerys confirmed that he would rely on it, saying that he currently did not have a sword. Chris then showed the rule that Aerys clearly did not suspect. Candidates are forbidden to bring their own swords or staffs to the exam. They must take weapons from the guild. He explained that swords vary greatly in combat power. It all depends on their type. To keep everything fair, both candidates and examiners must use only the swords provided by the guild. As soon as Aerys heard this, she decided to borrow a sword from the guild. And Chris instantly waved to the receptionist to bring another one. He remarked with surprise that he had never met a person who could simultaneously wield magic and a sword, called Aerys a magic swordsman, and added that all these tricks were useless if both his skills turned out to be weak. When the receptionist brought the sword and the fight broke out, Chris allowed Aerys to start whenever he felt ready. It seemed Chris was again ready to let him make the first strike, but victory by a surprise attack no longer pleased him. So he decided to deliver his first strike cautiously and restrainedly. At first, he cast 4 enhancement spells on himself and felt his movement speed soar, attack speed accelerate, strike power grow, and accuracy become ironclad. After that, he also charged his sword with magic. Chris froze with admiration, watching Evras's skill, and could not believe that he even knew how to enchant his sword. With incredible speed, Evras rushed at the examiner and simultaneously. He cunningly cast 4 insidious spells on Chris and his sword that drained their power. He immediately applied effects that slowed movement and attacks, as well as weakened Chris's strike power and accuracy. Chris looked stunned at Evras's incredible power, as if his body and sword were dragging a mountain, and he could not understand how everything happened so quickly. Aerys struck lightning fast. The attack succeeded. But instead of hitting Chris, it tore off his wig. It now lay on the ground. The observers were completely bewildered by this, and Chris thought it was an unexpected turn of events and he could do nothing about it. When Aerys stood right behind Chris, he sincerely apologized for the unexpected behavior, and Chris, whose voice and body noticeably trembled, quickly said not to worry, although Aerys felt guilty because of Chris's embarrassment. He definitely did not intend to hold back in this decisive duel. Activating step enhancement magic, he swiftly drew an exact magic circle and carefully directed its energy into his legs. Then he dashed so rapidly that he seemed to simply vanish into thin air before everyone's eyes, and Chris could not comprehend their sudden disappearance. Aerys, like a shadow, appeared almost imperceptibly right behind him and pressed the cold blade of the sword tightly against Chris' knee. This meant the end of the duel and brought victory to Aerys. Chris accepted defeat with dignity, and the other candidates froze in astonishment, seeing such an incredible demonstration of power that even the examiner gave up. They could not fathom who this new candidate was, who so easily defeated a level C examiner. Chris and Horace exchanged names, introducing themselves to each other. Chris asked with surprise if he was really a wizard from their group of heroes, and Aerys instantly, without hesitation, denied it. He did not believe it. Did Chris really think that one of their group of heroes would pass such exams? At that moment, he was intently staring at Chris's shiny bald head. Aerys apologized, but Chris quickly waved it off and said he understood it was not intentional. At that very moment, Aerys offered to help him instantly regrow hair, and Chris froze in surprise, doubting whether such a thing was even possible. Without hesitation, Aerys placed his hand on Chris's head, and at that very moment, as if by a miracle, his bald head was replaced by lush, thick, dark hair, and Chris was left speechless. Overcome with emotions, Chris sincerely thanked him, and immediately recognized Aerys as successful in the test, and advanced him straight to the final trial. Soon Aerys found himself in the northeastern forest of Exiled, near the village of Bergam. This was where the final trial took place, and he needed to collect certain items. The receptionist had told him earlier he needed to collect 20 herbs of life force for the potion. Within the strict 5-hour limit, he faced a strategic choice: either completely avoid fights or engage in them while effectively gathering the necessary herbs. The herbs of life force were the heart of the potion that healed the body and restored mana, and in the higher-rank hunting grounds, they grew abundantly because strong magical energy surged around. Hare thought that collecting 20 herbs in 5 hours was quite a challenge for an E-level adventurer, but the receptionist encouraged him, try hard, because there would be a reward for success. Aerys literally lit up with joy at this prospect. Any earnings were always to her liking. The Exiled forest itself was quite high-level and suitable for adventurers, but the monsters there were mostly manageable by a single player. Walking deeper into the forest, he soon came across a group of about 10 herds, and with a slight smile declared that collecting 20 was an easy task. Suddenly, a green one appeared from somewhere. Suddenly appearing, a fierce rat-like creature rushed at him at full speed, and Aerys instantly realized, although his defense was weak, the attack was very wild due to sharp and poisonous fangs. But suddenly Aerys powerfully kicked the rat. It flew off and fell to the ground. The smarter the monsters were, the more tricks they had. Seeing Aerys, those creatures wisely decided to retreat, which would definitely simplify the task for Russus. Finally gathering all the necessary herbs, he headed back to the guild. Suddenly out of nowhere, Arrows heard a piercing scream. A girl was desperately calling for help, and he rushed forward to check the commotion. He found a young girl and fell into an ambush of a threatening pack of blue wolves, and due to the lack of noticeable landmarks in their territory, lone travelers often found it difficult to conduct reconnaissance successfully. Suddenly a wolf lunged and attacked a girl named Celia, biting her wrist with its sharp fangs. Celia's defense lay in ruins, and her equipment proved useless. She desperately reached for a healing potion, but she accidentally dropped it, and it fell to the ground. Those fierce beasts bared their sharp fangs and prepared to attack. Then suddenly it lunged at her. Sharply through her back, she crashed against a tree. Celia reached out her hand for the discarded healing potion, but it was slightly out of her reach. A wolf loomed threateningly over her, ready to attack, and Aerys could no longer bear to watch this horror among adventurers. Stealing experience was taboo. First, Aerys decided not to interfere in their fight, but seeing Celia's helplessness, he couldn't stand it and intervened, effortlessly casting powerful enhancement spells specially created for women, sharply raising her defense and magical resistance, strengthening the healing power, and significantly accelerating her movements. He cunningly applied debuffs to the aggressive creatures. Their movement slowed, attack strength decreased, and accuracy even dropped. Finally, he empowered himself, and the wolves rushed at her. Celia instinctively closed her eyes in horror, but when she cautiously opened them again, she froze in amazement when she saw an unfamiliar figure nearby decisively helping her defeat the terrifying wolves, and Iris calmly advised her to stay closer to him because the danger was still near. He suddenly realized the true essence of buff magic is in granting properties, and most such effects can be fully reproduced. So enhancement magic can really be used offensively. Then Aerys boldly cast a powerful magic circle that immediately caught the eye, and instantly destroyed the entire pack of wolves, leaving Celia completely speechless. A few wolves that survived the first attack immediately fled the scene, and then Aerys gently grabbed her by the shoulder and pulled her closer, saying she was standing too close to the smoldering fire. She warned that this could have serious consequences if she fell under his influence, but the presence of another girl distracted Aerys. His face flushed, yet he still maintained his composure. He knew, in such an extraordinary situation, one cannot afford to be distracted even for a moment. Shortly after, they safely escaped from immediate danger. Celia bowed deeply before him and generously thanked him for his timely help, and Aerys replied that it was not important to him. Celia mockingly called it an underestimation and asked if he was a high-ranking adventurer. To her surprise, he answered that he had not yet considered himself a traveler and would become one only when he returned those herbs to the elders. He also asked why Celia found herself alone in such a dangerous place and noted that when strength is lacking, it can be deadly for lone adventurers. At first she hesitated, but very soon those doubts melted away. She confidently said that she wanted to become a hero. He asked if she wanted to join the hero squad, and her face instantly lit up with enthusiasm when she answered. Once a hero saved her, and since then heroes have been her greatest inspiration. She admitted that she deliberately went after high-level monsters, all for the sake of quickly gaining experience. Now, having nearly died due to her own recklessness, she seriously reconsidered her actions. Later, Aerys frankly told her that the swordsman's place in the hero squad was already taken. This will be a rather thorny path for whoever chooses it, but Celia assured him, "Don't worry, I am not a swordswoman." But he stubbornly insisted that she knew how to use a sword, although she herself was not a fencer. Celia immediately replied that her path did not fit any usual job, and she was convinced that one of the rarest unique professions must appear in the world. She declared with obvious enthusiasm that she is a saint of the sword. Meanwhile, in another part of the city in the southeast of the village of Bergam, near the grave of Gerald's soldiers, Aerys, a former heroine, and her party could not believe that they were now receiving the larger share of experience points, and even said that it was a very profitable way just to expel someone from the guild. Nardo said confidently, "They will definitely cover the costs of those potions." Others also whispered that enhancement magic can easily be replaced by ordinary store-bought potions, and that the expulsion of Aerys really turned out to be the right decision. Then they together rush into battle with a fierce wyvern. Some members could not help but notice that the monster was unusually resilient that day. They barely managed to keep up the pace, fighting with all their might against an incredibly strong creature. They felt that its attacks were terribly powerful and extremely harsh, so in the heat of the battle, one of them took out a strength elixir for everyone to drink. Meanwhile, Nardo strictly ordered them to fight the monster seriously. After we fought together and tried again and again, finally the team defeated those who hesitated all the time. Nardo confidently said that they could easily handle even a formidable enemy on their own. He still insisted that it was just a coincidence that this wyvern happened to be so strong by chance. Then he strictly ordered not to lose tempo, and the rest of the participants cautiously looked at each other. They did not dare to speak carelessly in front of Nardo. Instead, Celia, shining with admiration, told Aerys about her unusual job. She spoke with fire in her eyes. A sword saint is a unique profession without any analogs, and if she succeeds, she can become the highest evolution of a swordsman. She believed that even she could become a hero, it only takes effort, so she worked tirelessly, gathering experience points. In turn, Aerys explained that being a hero is not just about shine and rainbows, and how costly it was. Celia replied that she knows, being a heroine is hard, but she is determined to embark on an adventure with Aerys and believes she has no other choice but to become a heroine. When she so easily spoke his name, Aerys was breathless. He froze in surprise when his name suddenly came up in conversation. Aerys then asked in surprise why she even wanted to go on an adventure with him. Celia, as if in passing, confessed that she had fallen in love with him and wanted to go on an adventure together to get closer. Hearing this sincere confession, Aerys quietly laughed. But he immediately assured her that he was not laughing at her dreams at all. He later could not understand how she could trust him so easily if they had just met. She replied that he had put his life on the line to save her. She also shared a troubling memory. 3 years ago, the army of the Demon King invaded her native village Ruria. The demon grabbed her and immediately, with a cold smile, said he would get rid of her. He considered her inexperienced. When she stood on the brink of death, a group of heroes suddenly snatched her from the hands of death. One hero extended a gentle hand to her, like a promise of help. The scene returned to the present, and Aerys suddenly remembered how he once saved a child about her age in the village of Ruria, where a group of heroes stopped briefly, and confidently said that he saved Celia from the Rangit family. Foolish events were intently watching him. He inquired where he knew such precise details from. A more attentive look put everything in place. She noticed an impressive resemblance to the boy she had seen 3 years ago, and suddenly realized Aerys was the same prudent legendary hero from those times. Aerys now definitely knew that he was recognized as Celia, and Celia meanwhile inquired how one of the members of the hero squad was taking the adventurer exam. Aerys calmly whispered to her that he was suddenly expelled from the hero team. Now he simply aspired to become an adventurer, and Celia was very glad about that. Suddenly she met her savior. She was so surprised that she couldn't hold back and hugged Aerys, the very person she had longed to meet for so long. Then he, not hiding his curiosity, asked if she really wanted to form a party with him. Celia decisively said that it would suit her perfectly, and Rast, seeing her unwavering reaction, thought that she really intended to stay. Soon they reached the guild house, and the receptionist froze in surprise their rival had already managed to appear. When she asked about the herbs that invigorate, Joris instantly summoned the portal of his inventory. He impressively laid out before her all the collected herbs and creatures he had defeated, subtly hinting that she should buy some materials. Seeing the inventory portal, the receptionist gaped in surprise and immediately became interested in its mysterious nature, however. Horace did not start to explain. He said it was a company secret, but in reality it was his item slot skill, which, fueled by enhancement magic, allowed him to open a portal to another dimension. It was a side effect that appeared accidentally when he, using speed magic, interfered with the fabric of spacetime. But no one else could open it, so for the group of heroes it turned out to be almost useless. The receptionist asked him to wait a little while she processed the purchase. She greeted him with enthusiasm. He had successfully passed the adventure exam. She handed him the guild certificate and advised him to keep it carefully, since reissuing it would cost a significant amount, 10,000 jewels. At that moment, Celia intervened and decisively said she wanted to create a new party. Soon Aerys and Celia left the old house, and the fuss of forming the group finally ended. Celia suggested stopping by the nearby snack bar before returning. But Aerys bitterly said that he had nowhere to spend the night that night, and so they urgently had to find a place. Celia, quite casually, as if it were a trifle, suggested he stay at the hotel where she was already living. However, Aerys tried to explain. If she were a man, there would be no problems, but he was worried that something might happen if they decided to live in the same room. The explanation seemed to go over her head, and she, opening her big innocent eyes, asked if he would like to live with her in the same room. Her simple innocence melted him. He could not resist and decided to go to the cafe for now. Soon they arrived at the snack bar. Several delicious dishes were served at their table. Seeing the huge portions, Aerys wondered with surprise if she could eat it all. She told him, "Don't worry, I eat quite a lot." Then he anxiously asked if she was really serious and would allow him to stay in her room. She agreed without hesitation, smiling happily, saying, "I can eat that much and still rest with my beloved person." Later she realized that the portion was a bit too large for her appetite, but Aerys suggested eating the leftovers. She said that she really didn't need to force herself. When Aerys began eating from the same spoon as her face instantly changed. She thought it might be an indirect kiss. Seeing her embarrassment, he asked if she was okay, and she desperately tried to say that everything was fine. Soon they found themselves in her room, and Eurus noticed that her place was really nice, and Celia said that. After several attempts, she finally carefully chose that very tavern, and when they saw that the room was quite spacious, he said there was enough space for him to rest comfortably. But as soon as he began spreading the sheet on the floor, she asked, "What are you doing?" Then she noticed that he needed to rest in a proper bed, otherwise he might get sick. Her direct remark threw Ors off balance. Confused, he tried to explain the problem when a boy and a girl share one bunk. However, her innocent puppy look appeared again, and she quietly whispered whether he really didn't like the idea of resting with her. Heroes couldn't resist her request and finally agreed. Lying in the same bunk as her, he felt very awkward, especially when she lay so close to him. At that moment, Celia quietly laughed and said that his trembling breath tickled her neck, so he immediately turned away. The cot was quite cramped, so her body still pressed against his, and he even blushed. The next morning, everyone noticed that Aerys was doing push-ups with enthusiasm. Wizard skills are not mastered overnight. They needed both endurance and broad knowledge, and it was the ancient books of spells and nets that played a key role here. Then Celia woke up, cheerfully greeted him with a smile saying good morning, and asked why he woke up so early. Aerys replied that it was just his daily exercise. He had just completed his 1,000 push-ups, crunches, and squats. She froze at his strict daily routine and doubted whether he really followed it regularly. He asked in an indifferent tone if it was just a routine for everyone, but she immediately objected. This made him think that those heroes from his former party might have mocked how well it actually worked. With anxiety in her heart, she realized training is important, but he shouldn't exhaust himself to such extremes. Aerys stated outright that he intended to defeat the Demon King and then live peacefully, assuring that he would spare no effort for this great goal. He also said that if they defeated the Demon King, the ubiquitous magical energy would disappear, and they would no longer have to fight. In this world, substances in the air mostly did not harm people, but could suddenly awaken a variety of monsters. The Demon King fueled that magical energy with powerful barriers, and these monsters simply went mad. Ironically, Aerys had to become stronger to avoid fighting. Celia whispered that everyone truly wants a peaceful life, but added that such ambitions might be too great for him. Aerys could not disagree with her, but this explanation was clearly insufficient to understand everything fully. Then he began telling an old story about how everything happened 6 years ago, where in their real village a partisan dungeon suddenly appeared. Unlike ordinary dungeons, if this dungeon is not cleared by sunset, monsters will constantly burst out from its depths. Then both of Orz's parents, respected rank adventurers, entrusted him to lead the villagers to a safe place. He was eager to fight alongside them, but they did not want to involve someone who was not yet an adventurer in the battle. His parents were very strong, but that day he was haunted by a troubling premonition. Finally, he turned 13, and his parents promised to celebrate with him. When the sun set, the dungeon remained untouched, and due to the constant influx of monsters, even more adventurers tragically died. As a child, Aerys learned what happened to his parents and vowed to become strong to avenge them both. Celia remembered the appearance of the partisan underground in the city and sighed with relief. He was lucky to survive the attack. Heroes insisted that if the Demon King was not defeated, there would be even more such incidents, and he was determined to prevent these disasters at any cost. He apologized even for spoiling the mood, but Celia said that it was a very important topic for discussion. But Evers believed there was no point in getting stuck in the past. They were advised to eat well before going to the guild. Celia smiled kindly and advised him to take a quest immediately as soon as they arrived there. Soon they reached the guild, and Eurus Khan emphasized that without coordinated teamwork, they would not be able to defeat the Demon King, so strengthening the entire group was extremely important. First of all, he wanted to make Celia stronger, so he decided to complete the task in that very area. When Celia asked if he had found any suitable task, Orissa got ready and handed her the letter with the task, and it was a request to destroy monstrous birds. She said she was not sure how much help she could provide in that task, but he told her directly, that quest of the day was created just for you. Although it will be a bit difficult for Celia, she will still gain a lot of experience points. She barely took on the quest because she said her attacks wouldn't reach the birds. He asked if she really couldn't defeat flying enemies with a sword, and she firmly replied, it's impossible from any angle. When Aura saw her determined reaction, she thought, she is too attached to her principles, and to truly reveal the sword master's talent, she will have to overcome this obstacle. Without hesitation, he offered to teach her a simple trick so she could handle that task. The day passed, and soon they arrived at South Road 227, near the village of Exile of Aerys, offered to demonstrate the technique. And when a monstrous bird attacked him, he calmly told her, channel magic into the sword, tighten it, and imagine it strengthening during the swing. Celia froze in amazement, seeing his display of power, but he still had amazing tricks up his sleeve. Soon he directed a blazing laser of magical waves into the sky and instantly destroyed the surrounding area. He stood still and spoke what he believed in. Even she could perform this trick the same way, but she objected, stubbornly shaking her head. I am amazed and cannot understand how could this have happened. He handed her the sword, but the first time she barely managed taking, it turned out to be harder than it seemed. He began to explain, the most important thing is to relax your shoulders and let the magic flow smoothly when swinging the sword. After listening to the advice, Celia nodded and swung the sword, but the movements were awkward and inexperienced, so Iris came closer, firmly took her by both hands, and suggested practicing together a bit. This action made Celia blush with embarrassment. He noticed her tension and, suspecting nothing, asked if everything was all right, but she quickly declined and tried to focus on the training. He briefly commanded her, breathe in unison and strengthen your magic with a steady rhythm. A powerful magical beam burst from her sword. It instantly hit the terrible bird and knocked it down. Aerys asked her to keep that rhythm, then try a solo. She agreed and performed it herself. Her strikes kept missing the target, but he encouraged her to do her best. Even when her strikes sometimes missed, Celia did not stop training day after day. She honed the technique he taught her, and soon she applied it effortlessly, and her accuracy suddenly increased. Soon they had only one monster left. They would defeat it, and the task would be completed. Meanwhile, Aerys continuously praised her exceptional skills as a sword saint. Yes, he warned her, do not lower your guard until the very end. Although Aerys was ready to back her up if something went wrong, it seemed they would easily handle this quest. At that moment, his attention was instantly captured when Celia told him about the magical birds. Because of this, we are now completely leaving the scene. But their escape looked strange if they were simply afraid of Celia. Little magical birds usually do not scatter unless something is really wrong. At the same moment, a great tremor occurred. This completely caught Celia by surprise, as she anxiously asked what she should do in such a situation. However, Aerys showed neither the slightest fear nor surprise. Instead, he calmly noted that this last target had simply appeared. Flashed through his mind, Celia with one strike, without any effort, destroyed all the magical birds with such power she would easily handle that weaver too, and this instantly threw him into terrible anxiety. She asked in surprise if he was really asking her to fight that huge monster alone, and he calmly explained that hitting such a large target would be easier for her than those tiny birds. In a moment, Celia realized this really is an easier target, but her determination instantly wavered as soon as she saw the fierce beast with sharp fangs. Seeing her lose composure, Aerys rushed to calm her down. She firmly said that she was completely ready to defeat that creature with her skills, especially after mastering new techniques and gaining experience in battles. Then she noticeably calmed down and immediately pulled herself together. She decided to try one last time. When she struck again, a magical beam burst out and pierced its thick scales, and Celia could hardly believe her eyes that she had defeated the monster herself. Without hesitation, she immediately hugged Aerys and sincerely thanked him for teaching her, and he modestly said that he did almost nothing, only showed her a move, and advised Celia to believe a little more in her abilities. He suggested returning to the village, and she gently called him modest. He simply did not fully realize how valuable his help was. Soon they returned to the guild and, approaching the reception, reported that the task was completed. Who seemed truly impressed by the efficiency of the aerospace sphere and how skillfully they managed their time. However, he admitted, during that mission he did not fight at all. Instead, Celia herself, with a sword in her hands, defeated the magical birds. He said he just stood behind and watched her performance, and all the credit was hers alone. The receptionist could not believe that Celia could defeat such a number of magical birds with a single sword, and considered it physically impossible. Yet Celia stepped forward and said that she had learned an amazing spell from Aerys. She even praised him, saying that he teaches very skillfully and could effortlessly make the impossible possible. Aerys thought he would just support Celia from the side, but did not expect her to praise him so openly in front of the administrator. He could not hold back and blushed from her admiring compliments, then smoothly interrupted the conversation, deliberately diverted the topic from himself, and instead reported on the completion of their task. Immediately after that, she rushed to check the delivered materials. She felt that something was missing, but he calmly reassured her and immediately took out what was missing. Before her stood a giant wyvern, the very one that Celia had defeated earlier, and the receptionist froze in astonishment, seeing such a formidable beast right in front of her. And inside it swirled doubt whether this was really the wyvern that Celia had defeated. But Aerys was genuinely confused and asked if its appearance really shocked her so much. She exclaimed without any hesitation, "This really shocked me a lot." Because that wyvern was one of the most powerful magical creatures, even B-rank adventurers could barely defeat it. Aerys was genuinely surprised. He did not even suspect that he had such great power. It seemed the squad of heroes effortlessly defeated these creatures, and the receptionist decided that they themselves were very strong. At that moment, the heart tightened with risk. Would it be possible to sell the wyvern material at a good price? But the receptionist calmly assured that yes, and this would significantly increase their income. Then she quickly assessed the refusal and, meanwhile, she recorded the completion of the quest and then took their guild IDs. Their quest completion points were updated, now 30 out of 100, and they were given one more guild point. She also added that as soon as these points reach 10, he will receive the next rank. Diligently completing tasks and accumulating these points, people will eventually raise the rank of their adventure. Then Celia was asked if they could simply level up by completing simpler quests. "That will not be a problem," the receptionist replied. She noted, to advance, they need to complete at least one task from each rank, so that unworthy adventurers never reach higher ranks. But the administrator at the reception immediately added that the E rank is clearly not suitable for them. They have extraordinary abilities and truly strong points. It was then that their evaluation was completed, and she almost froze with surprise when she saw such a significant amount on the list. She announced with shining eyes that the reward for their quest was 50,000 jewels. And just for this one fluctuation, the bio price would jump by another 50,000 gems. When they left the guild, Celia was clearly upset. She did not know what to do with such a large sum, had never received so much money at once before, and was afraid it might be stolen. In response, Aerys calmly assured her that in such a case they would simply go hunting again, but Celia added with a worried expression that Aerys had earned that money hard. Hearing this, Aerys suggested splitting the 50,000 fee among themselves and giving all the reward from the wyverns to Celia. He recalled how his former team of heroes constantly argued over dividing the loot. But this time Aerys insisted on a fair division. Celia herself killed the wyvern and deserved her share, and Celia objected that she was not alone. And they insisted that without him they could not have one, demanding that he receive the full amount. Hearing this, Aerys could not help but call her kind. He gently suggested that she temporarily allow him to hold the money, slipped the pouch into his item slot, and promised to spend it to buy Celia suitable weapons. She drew the sword from its sheath and with a barely noticeable smile said, "Not a bad weapon." But Aerys only smiled and guessed that it was probably a decent sword from the market. Then he added that although the sword was good, this turned out to be insufficient to awaken the true power of synchronization with the sword, and very soon she would realize that this was lacking in many things. He advised thinking ahead and purchasing a better sword in advance, and Celia was surprised that he looked so far ahead. Then he, smiling, said that for the 100,000 jewels received, they could even order a sword. Hearing this, Celia became excited and asked if it was his gift, and he just said that it was a reward for her efforts. Meanwhile, the party of the former hero Joris clung to the fight to keep up, and finally realized kicking Joris out of the group was a huge mistake. Although one of them could at least somewhat compensate with potions and healing skills, it was clearly not enough to heal the wounds they were currently suffering. Other participants guessed that Joris seemed to both weaken the monsters and at the same time strengthen them. But another said, "I've never heard of such a possibility." They recalled how back then they kicked Aerys out without any hesitation. Nardo made him fall silent, and at that moment, they realized that Aerys was really trying to say something important before he was kicked out. Now they finally understood that Joris had been silently supporting them behind the scenes all along. One participant even said, if she had known the truth earlier, she would never have allowed Nardo to persuade her to expel Aerys. Nardo sharply approached and firmly grabbed her by the shirt, accused her of hypocrisy, and insisted that she was secretly plotting something too. And now they looked at him as if he were the villain himself. He admitted that they all together decided to expel Aerys from the party, so they were all equally guilty. Trembling, she uttered an apology, and Nardo gently suggested to let go of the past and just move forward. More importantly, he inquired about the supply of healing potion, to which she tersely replied that she had already spent the funds allocated for this month. Without hesitation, he simply ordered her, "Go to the store and buy more." Then she sadly said that the repair of their damaged equipment after yesterday's brutal battle cost 800,000 gems, and if this continued, there would not be enough money for living next month. Nardo was silent for a moment, then said, "Aerys is a comrade who risked together with us, and I will not refuse him if he wants to return to the squad." It was clear that Nardo did not want to humiliate himself before comrades after he himself expelled Eurus, and he realized that the slightest carelessness could completely overturn the balance of power in the group. He suddenly decided, and the other members instantly agreed, without any complaints. Nardo also promised that if he met Aerys again, he would personally approach and ask him to return. Meanwhile, the girl decisively stated that after he was kicked out like that, Aerys would never return, but the other members forced her to be silent, stating that the real step forward was that Nardo even changed his mind. Moreover, he realized that he didn't even have the qualifications for adventures, and without them, he would no longer be able to take on orders. They were sure that he had to return because he couldn't earn money and find new comrades, but they didn't guess that Eurus had already created a new group with his very reliable partner Celia. Meanwhile, Arisu was refused at the weapons shop. The sellers dryly explained that they only trade what is on the shelves, and custom orders are difficult to fulfill. Celia imagined the bet she won brought her as much as 50,000 jewels, but she couldn't even order a custom sword. Aerys suggested trying to convince the weapons merchants in the capital, and at that moment, his gaze turned to New York. People around whispered that the dwarf recently refused a job offer that was worth a whole fortune and full of jewels, and didn't know how to convince him. In this world, dwarves were famous for their craftsmanship, and even during the adventures with the party of heroes, Aerys had heard about that master from the dwarf clan. Without hesitation, Aura approached these people and decisively asked for more details. The man noticed that Aerys seemed somewhat familiar to him, and with interest asked if he also wanted to learn about that gnome master. In response, Aerys confirmed and humorously and energetically said that she wanted a powerful custom sword. The man said that they went there hoping to also find good weapons, but that old dwarf turned out to be extremely stubborn and simply refused to satisfy their request. They even told him the gnomes demanded that he make items only for those whom he himself would consider worthy. They accepted only one thing, the ability to wield a sword. Later, Aerys took out a map and asked if they could say where he was, and the man clearly pointed on the map in a certain direction. Noticing that the workshop was very close, Celia decided to go there the same day. Just then her stomach suddenly growled loudly, and she blushed deeply, trying to excuse this awkward sound. But he decided it was better to set out for the workshop the next day, and when she was so hungry, he asked her not to overexert herself. Suddenly a young girl named Sherrit accidentally bumped into a burly man and scraped her knee, but did not hesitate. Aerys rushed to her and instantly healed the wound. Sherrit froze in amazement when she saw that her injured knee miraculously healed, sincerely thanked, and quickly left. Celia tried to compliment his kindness, but her stomach growled loudly again, and she felt completely humiliated. Aerys' soft cackle only irritated her even more, and she scolded him harshly for his rudeness. The next morning they arrived at the workshop of the infamous gnome Gale and knocked on his sturdy gates. Suddenly a short elderly man appeared and demanded to know why they were there. Aerys, a bit embarrassed, apologized for coming without warning, introduced himself, and said he was looking for a master craftsman. Gale shook his head distrustfully and said that Aerys was just another adventurer in search of weapons. Aerys told him that they wanted to order a sword for Celia, and Gale, without hesitation, immediately asked if Celia really deserved his custom sword. Even before asking her to show her current weapon for the first time, he carefully examined her sword and felt her potential was truly impressive, but she was still far from refined mastery. He was convinced that if he entrusted his sword to an inexperienced person, she would simply abuse its natural power. Celia's face darkened. Edge accepted it. She decided first she would improve her skills, and then dare to return because she had seen how easily they give up. Gale said in surprise that after being refused, they didn't even try to bribe their way inside, and Aerys replied that Gale was someone you couldn't buy with any amount of gold. And he didn't even have money. There wasn't enough to somehow buy them entry. To Gale, this frankness was like a breath of fresh air, but his initial conclusion did not change, and in a strange coincidence, Sherrit suddenly appeared, noticing that her grandfather was once again sending adventurers away empty-handed. Then she met Aerys and Celia, and sincerely thanked them again for that invaluable help the day before. Embarrassed, Gale asked if he knew them, and Sherrod confirmed. Shortly after that, revealing everything that had happened the day before. Rizik could hardly believe that the child they saved was his granddaughter, and it seemed they had indeed managed to break through Gale's protective shell. It seemed as if he had softened a little upon learning about yesterday's event. Later, Gale said that they were not at all the bad people he had initially thought them to be, and that he would immediately give them his sword now. Celia looked quite pleased with his announcement. Sherrod said that her grandfather simply did not allow anyone to misuse his valuable swords. Moreover, Gale warned, if the adventurers turned out to be weak, they could easily lose their sword to a villain. Then the moment came. He set 3 important conditions before them. First, Aerys would throw himself into training again and hone Celia's swordsmanship. Second, he would have a sword forged by Gale himself. Feeling that Gale, not Celia's, would make him an individual sword. Risk continued to question him. Gale immediately said that, in his opinion, Aerys was the most skilled swordsman, and Celia had the greatest potential as a swordsman. Aerys tried to explain that he was not a swordsman, but just a mage, but Gale insisted that titles did not matter to him. He explained that if they became pure and strong swordsmen, that would be enough for him, because it was his most cherished dream as a craftsman. Then Aerys asked, did that last condition mean gold? Gale waved his hand indifferently, saying he already had enough wealth. Then he announced the last condition, to bring more than 1 kilogram of spiritual stone. Soon Aerys and Celia found themselves in the dense bergam forest. It is called the Forest of Spirits. Aerys could not help but notice Gale really set the toughest conditions for their final task. In that forest, the energy of spirits, like a quiet wave, quietly accumulated in various magical creatures. And at the very top of the food chain were mostly predators. Celia carefully touched the monsters with her sword, holding them back so that Aerys could examine the stones they dropped. He, shaking his head in disappointment, noticed that even the large ones gave only about 30 of the required amount, and Celia noted that the encounter with the strongest monsters depended only on luck. Aerys said that during the search they would have to be patient, and Celia jokingly suggested that the monsters might come to them themselves. When he heard this, an idea instantly flashed in his mind, and he announced they would lure the strongest monster with bait. But when she began to ask about the bait, Risk directly said that it would be him, and Celia simply froze in shock. Although it was illogical, Aerys still decided to present himself as bait, carefully regulating his magic to attract attention. This way, they could lure large predators that sense the slightest fluctuations of magical energy. Aerys believed that if he restrained a powerful surge of magic and released it immediately, the largest beast in the forest would definitely show itself. Aerys instantly implemented his plan, and, as he predicted, the most terrifying monster of the forest appeared. Its powerful steps shook the ground threateningly. Celia was clearly frightened by its sudden appearance, and Aerys instantly covered her mouth, making sure she was silent. At that moment, suddenly a huge, terrible monster fully appeared before Celia, and she was overwhelmed with horror. Meanwhile, Aerys, with cold calmness, noted that due to the beast's enormous size, they could obtain a truly gigantic spirit stone. That predatory beast ruled the entire forest. Everyone knew him as Behemoth. Even a fierce enemy arrests the one whom his former team could not defeat in his heroic days. Aerys instantly came up with a plan. He ordered Celia to dodge right immediately after the attack, while he himself would distract the monster's attention. He swiftly created a magic circle right behind him, drew the monster's attention, and the enraged beast suddenly lunged at him. At the opposite corner of the field, Celia successfully released a magic beam and hit the brute precisely. Aerys sharply ordered her to dodge in a commanding tone, and at that moment, an arrow of wind burst from his powerful wind magic. Although the behemoth had a natural affinity with the earth, Celia and Aerys cleverly combined their magical powers and directed them at the behemoth with full destructive force. When the defeated monster lay before them, skepticism flashed in Celia's eyes. She still barely believed that they had managed to bring down Behemoth themselves. She enthusiastically praised the incredible power of Oros, and he modestly admitted that he could not have done it alone. She said she was just following his orders, and Eurus decided not to escalate and let it go. He also argued that a monster of such caliber should yield a huge spirit stone, so they went to inspect the body of the fallen beast and were stunned. In its stomach, they found a tiny young girl with delicate wings curled up so small that she fit in both palms, when Celia doubted the very fact of her existence. Aerys confessed that because of her noticeable magical power, she could be a spirit living there. Exactly then, the girl came to her senses and said, "I rested so well." Her gaze fell on two strangers, and she, as if nothing had happened, calmly asked who they were. Although she looked tiny, Aerys instinctively felt her colossal power tens of times stronger even than giants. For now, he decided to behave cautiously around her so as not to scare her. Without hesitation, Celia introduced herself as a member of the recreation group, and despite his anxiety, introduced her to him. The young girl happily introduced herself as Self, the infamous forest spirit. Seeing this, Iris quietly sighed with relief, so it only concerned him. He felt a little embarrassed because of his own suspicion, and Celia noticed that he looked unexpectedly shy. Moreover, he himself admitted, people are seen very rarely so deep in the mountains. Having learned more about their business, Aerys did not hide. He directly admitted that they came to look for spirit stones. Hearing this, Self-Preferfly froze for a moment, before focusing all his strength to make a sturdy stone chair. Eurus froze in astonishment, seeing the supreme spirit stone right before him, and immediately wanted to have it, so without hesitation they quickly handed him the stone. He generously offered to make even a double portion for them, and Aerys could not help but admire this. Reflecting on its tremendous weight after all, even 1 kilogram of spirit stone was a true rarity. Although it was the fulfillment of his dream, he felt that its scale far exceeded what they could pay for. Without hesitation, Salt innocently said that she could produce as many batches of those stones as she wanted. Then Celia told her that the spirit stones formed from excess magical energy, and even the largest beasts rarely gave stones larger than a palm. Because there was nothing on the market that even slightly surpassed the previous model, it was truly considered priceless. Aerys gently told her that he could not simply take such a priceless item without offering anything in return. She simply said that she wanted to travel. Hesitating a little, he asked if that was really all she wanted, and she nodded. Moreover, Celia inquired whether spirits like her could really be outside the forest, and boldly assured that she could live there for several years. She confessed with a sad expression that she had long been stuck completely alone in that dim forest. It became truly unbearable for her, and she admitted that just talking with them noticeably lifted her spirits and gave her strength. Aerys and Celia exchanged glances, and Urus extended his hand, inviting them to join their adventure. When Aerys activated the item slot to insert the spirit stone, I jumped in surprise and immediately asked if they could also enter the spirit world. He was noticeably embarrassed by her words, so she quickly inserted half of her form into the item slot. Aerys suddenly realized what he had long considered his personal item slot had actually been the spirit world all along, and Self said that it was very spacious there and that it was more important. She enthusiastically said that for a human, the ability to be in the spirit world is a true miracle. And when Celia also acknowledged Aerys as amazing, he couldn't help but wonder why she was so proud of him. She told Sulf that she could freely travel from the spirit world and that Aerys had essentially become a spirit, and Sulf jokingly called him Dad. It struck him deeply. When he suddenly became completely speechless, she blushed and asked if she had said something wrong, and Aerys quietly replied that she came out of the belly of the Behemoth, so technically she was his child. She completely ignored his remark and continued calling Celia Mom, and Celia, as if not worried, playfully admired the game. Sulf also asked if she didn't like being called Mom, but Celia innocently replied that she was sincerely happy finally she had a family. She looked tenderly, her cheeks flushed, and then said that Eurus had finally become a father too. Hearing this, Aerys froze in complete surprise and was completely silent when suddenly, it seemed to him that he and Celia were already a couple. He suddenly doubted whether he was feeling unwell, and Celia asked if he really disliked being called Dad. Seeing their sweet and innocent faces, he couldn't resist and simply accepted their reckless and playful decisions. In a few minutes, the three of them reached the village, and he was stunned to see so many people, while Iris was sure that everyone was looking at him because of his butt. Seeing how those people were staring at her so intently, she became embarrassed and lightly hid herself in the spirit world. But suddenly, the former Aerys team appeared before him, the same people who had cruelly expelled him from their group. Eros, seeing them, sharply asked what they wanted from him, and Nardo asked him not to be so cold and sadly reminded him that they were once comrades. Eurus could not understand why they appeared out of nowhere after they had expelled him from the party, but Nardo said that since Eurus left, it seemed that everyone had so many thoughts in their heads, and he also felt that maybe he missed his former comrades. Then he said, if he wants, he might agree to accept him back into the hero team. Nardo added that Aerys's name is still on the hero party lists, so his return is only a matter of time, and he still has a chance to rejoin the party. Only 3 days without Aerys's rescue magic in Nardo, and the others lost their pride much faster than he expected. With a barely noticeable intonation, Aerys remarked that it seemed everyone misunderstood something fundamental. He then said that he was not sure if they really wanted him to return to the party, and added that it seemed they did not understand their situation at all. This sharp comment left everyone speechless for a moment. Nardo sharply cut in, saying that Aerys seemed to have misunderstood their intentions. Other members also warned him, if he strays from the hero's path, his rise to power will end, emphasizing that this was his last chance to. He was advised to reconsider his decisions, but Aerys only reluctantly replied that he did not care whether to be a hero or rise in ranks. With a quick move, he pulled the defeated giant from the inventory portal above them and added that he was completely satisfied with his position. He also said that he no longer intended to return to the hero party for him. The most important thing now was that he had made truly important friends. Boiling with rage, Naruto sharply called him Koki and threatened to immediately erase his name from the royal city's registers, warning that Eurus would regret not listening earlier. In response, Risk warned him in a carefree tone. Only time would show who would regret more, and advised him to please Nardo's. Shortly after their departure, Salt came out of the portal, and not hiding his curiosity, asked about those strangers, and Silly replied that they seemed to be the former hero team of oars. Celia noted that they would not hurt to ask more politely if they were so desperately eager to bring him back, but Eri only coldly replied that their pride would never allow them to do that. She told them that every time she felt the presence of other people besides them, she would hide in the spirit world. Soon they arrived at Gale's workshop and placed a chair made of spirit stone before him, which made him freeze in amazement. Gale immediately put on his glasses and carefully examined the object, aloud wondering how Aerys could have obtained such a priceless material, and Aerys explained that it was a whim of the spirits. A remark, and in it was hidden a grain of truth. Gale said with enthusiasm that he had never seen such a wonderful material before. He was eager to immediately start working on that unusual product, and when Gale ordered to work, he focused on shaping it with precise hammer strikes, striving to make the product to his liking. Aureus hesitated whether such an action would interfere with the magical formation of the spirit stone. Meanwhile, Sherrod came and suggested sitting down to drink tea, and soon Gale immersed himself in his work. Over cups of hot tea, Sherrod proudly told that such work would take an ordinary blacksmith days, but her grandfather manages incredibly fast. He has the strength of 100 men, and Celia smiled. Gale is indeed a boastful grandfather. He also asked if it was really possible to forge such a complex thing so quickly, and Orst replied that modern blacksmiths also use magic. That colossal magical power of Gale, which he had felt earlier, finally confirmed the rumors about his amazing abilities. Then they asked the heir when it would be most convenient to return for the swords, and Sherach's answer shocked him so much that he jumped up in disbelief. She said everything would be ready by the end of the day. He complained that everything was happening too fast, and she, unable to contain her excitement, praised her grandfather for his efficiency and world-famous skill, and just then Gale came and announced that the work was completed. He placed 2 miraculous swords before them and declared that these were undoubtedly his greatest works. As soon as Aerys grabbed the sword, he immediately felt its amazing lightness and maneuverability. Although these swords did not use the spirit stone directly, they were filled with concentrated magic that significantly enhanced the attack power. Celia could not hide her joy upon receiving her first custom sword. It was incredibly light and easy to handle, but Jarest immediately warned her not to swing it recklessly. All his efforts were in vain. Her barely noticeable sword movement caused a huge magical explosion that completely destroyed Gale's house and stunned everyone. A huge torn hole gaped in the ceiling of the workshop, and Celia was noticeably trembling, not knowing what to do. Gale realized he really shouldn't have trusted his magnificent sword to such an inexperienced amateur like her. But Eurus reacted instantly with a single light movement. His healing magic patched the large hole in the ceiling. Seeing this, Shur joyfully praised him for his excellent skills, and Gale finally sighed with relief. Meanwhile, Silly deeply bowed before Gale and sincerely apologized for ruining his native home, and he kindly smiled, reassured her with the words, "Don't worry," and added that the house actually looked much cleaner than before. Moreover, Gale extracted a promise from them. Aerys would take on the most important care for Celia and personally master the Sword of News, because he sincerely believed Aerys and Celia were naturally connected. And both carefully agreed before departure. Leaving the workshop, Celia once again sincerely apologized for her reckless behavior, and Aerys advised her to be careful with the new sword and emphasized its extraordinary strength. At that moment, she seemed to appear out of nowhere, arched her back, and yawned widely. When he asked if she was tired, she immediately denied it, and Aerys couldn't help but think that in some ways she really was childish. Silly suddenly shuddered and felt. The days were getting longer, but the nights were still cold. Suddenly an idea came to her mind, and with a slight smile she reached out and gently took Aura's hand, saying that this would warm them for now. His face uncontrollably reddens, and on the other hand, one could jokingly note that they really looked like a couple. But Celia said indifferently that his hands were just very warm. Gently intertwining her fingers with his, she whispered that she would like to stay like this forever. Aerys' face blushed. It would be worrying if she really did not notice the awkward situation she herself was creating, but he thought that maybe she was just exaggerating everything. At that moment, make a joke. Her mom and dad seemed to get along very well. She also asked if they were finally going home, and Aerys said they were going to Celia's inn. Self coquettishly blushed and teasingly asked if they would stay in the same room, and Celia calmly replied that there was no free space for auras. Self called her amazing and jokingly called her mom, and Aerys thought that one must be extremely careful with Self. At that moment, they noticed a suspicious boy in a worn hood who seemed to be looking for a guest in a black cloak and was standing at the place where they agreed to meet. Aerys moved forward, and suddenly a boy approached him. And when Aerys asked, "Who is he?" the boy quietly waved his hand, as if urging him to enter the nearby alley. Celia asked if he really knew that person, and Aerys replied that the boy did not seem particularly hostile, but at the same time was clearly interested in the circumstances. Then something clicked inside him, and he suspected that the suspicious boy knew about his true identity, that he was once a hero. Without hesitation, Aerys decided to follow the boy into a narrow alley. Then the boy modestly apologized for disturbing them. When asked who he was, he simply replied that he was buying guild cards. Moreover, he was sure that he had extra guild cards and was patiently waiting for their arrival. Hearing this, Aerys firmly said that a personal guild card is never superfluous, and trading such cards is strictly prohibited. It immediately became clear that the boy had mistaken Aerys for someone else, and having just realized his mistake, he fled. He suggested they just pretend that they had never met. But Aerys firmly grabbed him by the hood and sternly said. It looked as if the boy fully realized his guilt, and now he would have to face the consequences for the sake of peace. When he suddenly threw the boy into his spirit world, the boy whispered that he did it only for profit and promised not to do it again. Soon Aerys and Celia entered the guild and instantly pulled out a stack of guild cards, placing it right in front of the receptionist. Having asked what happened, she froze in shock. He told about every little detail of the events. She reported that the loss and theft of guild cards had long been a problem, but before she could say more, the piercing scream of an unfamiliar woman cut through the air, loudly asking if they also had her guild card. When the crowd suddenly gathered and began demanding their guild cards, the receptionist desperately begged them to calm down and take out their cards one by one. Seeing that chaos, Aerys realized the matter was serious and apologized for causing her this trouble at such an inconvenient moment. He also asked what would happen to the boy involved in this illegal activity, and she replied, he would be handed over to the guards, and then his parents would be informed. At that moment, the boy confessed that he had neither parents nor brothers or sisters, and no one to call him, and everyone understood he was an orphan. Aerys said that he understood his feelings very well, because at such a young age, he already knew what the pain of losing parents was. He also said that this did not justify his actions, and that he must bear full responsibility for his actions himself. Then Aerys, with a tremor in his voice, asked what would happen to the orphans, and the receptionist quietly said that they would probably be taken in by an educational institution in the royal capital. When he heard this, Aerys sighed with relief. He was convinced that young orphans like them should be given a decisive chance for re-education. As they began to walk, the boy quietly thanked him, and with a sad expression on his face, said that he was barely making ends meet, hardly had any money to support himself, and Aerys silently observed his unkempt appearance. It turned out that he was just a petty thug, and almost all the money went into his boss's pocket. He then strongly advised the boy to leave the underground world, especially since Aerys had put in effort and saved him from a much worse fate. When they finally left, Horace noticed that the same women who had loudly demanded her guild carriage not long ago were now standing with noticeably upset faces. It was clear from her face, it seemed, that the lost guild card was not found in the stack they had found. Celia squinted a little, seeing that he was intently looking at another woman, pouted, and said directly that she was leaving. Seeing her strange reaction, he became worried and asked if everything was all right, but she insisted that she was not angry. Although her face was still stubbornly pouting, soon they were shown they were standing in front of the task board. Celia wondered which quest to take to finally, properly test her new sword, but for now she was kept within the E-level quests. Meanwhile, Heroes thought that he had spent a whole lot on his sword, so he decided to take on some task to pay for lodging. Celia became worried and suggested simply surrendering and sticking to usual requests, but he rejected this and immediately handed her the task form. The task was to track down a rank E golem. Golems were colossal creatures with enormous destructive power and armor as hard as stone, but quite slow. Orisa told her that even rank E adventurers, if there were about 12 of them, could defeat this enemy, so it would be a good target even for beginners. With anxiety and sadness on her face, she asked if they really were going to fight enemies designed for a dozen people. He calmly told her that from now on she was not alone as before, and under his protection, not even a scratch threatened her. He sincerely praised her independence. A wave of new confidence washed over her, and she agreed to fulfill the request, and Joris thought that Celia's and Dai's praise constantly lifted her spirits. When Salt stepped into the lush green forest, her face lit up with admiration, and she enchantedly admired the scenery. The landscape unfolded bright, spacious, and extraordinarily refreshing. He thought she really stayed so long in that dim, lonely forest and promised himself to fully enjoy the world beyond it. He reminded Celia of their task and instantly devised a plan. First, he would distract the Gallic warrior with magic, and she would sneak up from behind and strike quickly. As they cautiously executed the plan, he himself became bait in front of a huge, terrifying golem. Aerys beckoned Celia with a gesture. She rushed at the golem and with one powerful blow split the monster in half. Still not believing it, asked if this was really the end. He confirmed it with weight in his voice. That was how it looked. The sword gale was undoubtedly powerful, but by itself could not explain such extraordinary strength. Celia guessed that the Gons in those parts might be weaker than they expected, but Aerys firmly denied it and instantly sheathed his sword, and said that they were almost no different from ordinary galons, but when he tried to cut another one, he realized their newly acquired weapon was simply too powerful. It seemed his inner development was running ahead of what he could yet comprehend, so he decided to tackle everything at once, claiming that facing them alone simply would not work. Celia looked with distrust. Could the Gons really approach them all at once? And Aerys, instead of explanations, decided simply to show what he was capable of. Without delay, he swiftly created a magic circle, subtly spread magic over a large area, and instantly fixed the positions of all enemies around. Then he accurately aimed at the remaining 8 Gons, and with one spell filled them with threatening power. When those terrifying Galons advanced relentlessly, Iris calmly said that with her current strength she could handle that many, and Celia froze in surprise. Iris's trick worked flawlessly. In a matter of seconds, with a smooth and precise sword strike, she effortlessly instantly defeated all the girls. This stunned Aerys. He praised her. In 2 days, she had honed the technique he showed during the hunt for the monstrous bird, and for the first time agreed to take the sword. He added that these were only the basics, and there was still much to learn ahead, and Celia was truly impressed by this. When he placed the remains of the defeated Gons into his slot, he was stunned. She absorbed power much better than he expected. When they began to retreat, some told her to return, and added that she really collected a lot of scraps, but when he looked at them more closely, he came across a guild card in the name of Yukina Rembrandt, with the position of Sage, the very same very prudent woman who was desperately searching for her guild ID. Aerys told Celia about the sages, explaining, "I said that they were one of those unique roles that stood alongside sword saints." He foolishly and indifferently asked if they also wielded swords like her, but immediately denied it. A master of magic appeared on the stage, especially skilled in offensive spells, and impressed everyone with his incredible talent. She enthusiastically asked if there was a chance that 2 unique positions could work side by side, and he explained that both of their works are a true embodiment of unique talents important for the nation. He suggested immediately returning to the guild and reporting this important news, then gently patted Saltz on the head and sincerely thanked her for the invaluable help. In the Yukina guild house, she was still desperately searching for the lost guild card and did not believe she could get it back. She also inquired about the fee for reissuing at the reception. They told her it was a considerable 10,000 precious stones. As soon as she clearly became nervous, Aerys' team appeared with reassuring news, and they told her that they found her guild card on the way. Yukina literally lit up with joy when she saw the lost guild card. I also asked if her wallet was with it. Unfortunately, Aura said they only had the guild card so far. She trembled as she told that her wallet was snatched, and the thief simply discarded the cards. She sighed with relief when she got it back and said she wanted to somehow repay the help. Harris told her not to worry, but she replied that this would not happen. She could have been taken somewhere else, and there they could seriously abuse her. He replied that there really are suspicious dealers who illegally trade guild cards, and that the risks are much higher than he initially imagined. Then she boldly blurted out that she had no cash on her, so she without hesitation would repay him with her body. This remark instantly threw Aerys off balance and stunned him. Silly naively asked what she meant, but Aerys stammered and couldn't explain anything. Realizing that it was too early for Celia to deal with such delicate matters, he turned to Yukina, hinting that she should watch her surroundings a little more carefully before saying such words. She simply and sincerely said that she would gladly help him at every opportunity. Besides, she sincerely and firmly said that she would gladly repay his kindness. He stammered and couldn't form a proper sentence in front of her. Her face fell, and she quietly whispered that they seemed to consider her a burden who would hardly help in battle. Aureus looked sincerely surprised at her words, so she calmly explained. She meant exactly what she said and resolutely promised to put her heart and soul into helping with any request. At that moment, Aerys stunnedly understood the innocent meaning of her careless words, felt relieved, and nervously said that he was very glad to accept her offer of help, and Yukina asked what suddenly embarrassed him so much. Suddenly a memory of her flashed through Yukina earlier. She accidentally made a remark and immediately blushed with shame, couldn't look him in the eyes, and barely believed the words that had just slipped from her lips in front of a complete stranger. She admitted her mistake and confessed that she really should have been more careful with her wording, and Aerys kindly advised her not to dwell too much on it. Instead, Celia was so inattentive that she didn't even notice the awkward situation, so she smiled and invited Yukina to join their company, wishing to set off together on interesting adventures. And all three immediately introduced themselves to each other. Aerys said that he wanted to see Yukina's skills in action, and she, with the same burning enthusiasm, wanted to test his abilities. Aerys decisively declared that he would take control of the testing grounds, and the administrator gladly offered to lead them to the training site. On the testing field, Yukina said with excitement that she would show her powerful magical strength, and Joris could not help but notice she looked quite confident. Skillfully preparing to cast a spell, she swiftly activated the offensive spell, Flame Beans, and fired a lightning-fast beam that instantly turned the straw scarecrow to ashes. Celia was quite impressed by her display of power. Eurus praised her flawless fire might and thoroughly scanned the testing ground. Yukina looked at the neglected exam site and wondered if it had always been like that. She had no idea that the reason for this stood right beside her. Then the receptionist told her all the details of the day when Eurus took the exam. Moreover, she handed Aura 300,000 gems for completing the quest and for bringing a total of 10 golems. The sum was divided between Aerys and Celia, 150,000 each, and Yukina was stunned with surprise upon hearing such a large amount. And Celia quietly confessed, none of those achievements belonged to her. Moreover, Aerys gathered 70 guild points and even rose to D rank. Yukina was stunned with surprise. It took him only 2 tasks to rise from E rank to D rank, and at that moment her stomach growled loudly. He nudged Aerys to suggest going to the cafeteria and having lunch before they continued, but to his surprise, she sadly replied that she had no money at all. He hadn't eaten anything since yesterday, and that truly shocked him. Celia's eyes burned with determination. She firmly squeezed her hand and said that she couldn't fight on an empty stomach. He insisted that he would treat her to lunch. Soon they arrived at the noisy cafeteria, and Yukina devoured everything placed before her as if she hadn't eaten in a long time, while Aerys watched, impressed by her amazing appetite. Yukina smiled, praised the delicious dish, and sincerely thanked them both. In turn, Celia smiled and praised her incredible appetite. Aerys was stunned and thought, how dare she say that to her face? It seems Celia and Yukina get along wonderfully. While Aerys thought Yukina was a simple girl, albeit with an unusual job, he began to question her because he believed that offers to join teams were coming at her from all sides. Since she was considered respected and wise, he asked which team she was on now, but she replied that she was traveling alone and simply could not fit into the team she once belonged to. She said that they just saw the future differently, and he thought to himself that this was a fairly typical reason for a breakup. Then Celia thought that Yukina might be hiding some deeper reason for her such meticulousness about the future. She whispered that she was searching for 7 tombs of magic scattered around the world. Aerys asked to confirm if it was true. There exists a legendary tomb that allows one to master various spells just by reading it. She replied that this is only possible for those who are truly worthy, and Aerys added that it is a treasure that only the wise can comprehend. She added that Kay was a famous scholar in magic, and showing a neatly and precisely written collection of notes, said that these were his research records containing important clues to his spell books. When Aerys asked who it was about, she quietly replied that it was her late father, who died when she was still a child. She resolutely promised that she would definitely collect everything while she was alive, and this made Celia wonder why she resorted to such extremes. The reason was painful. Her mother, who had cared for her all this time, had recently died. Yukina, confused by loss and at the same time filled with unexpected freedom, came across her father's forgotten research. Aerys finally understood why she had so passionately collected those spell books and felt that she had carried a rather heavy emotional burden for a long time. Yukina also confessed to him that she sincerely dreamed of discovering the magic of resurrection as soon as she gathered all 7 volumes. Embarrassed and confused, he asked if she meant to resurrect her parents, and she admitted that it was part of her motivation. What tormented her most was the thought that she could lose someone dear again. Risk called her kind-hearted, but she quietly thought that she was actually more of a coward. Aerys knew better than anyone what unbearable pain from losing a loved one was. He was sure that in her place, he would have done the same. But the strangest thing was that Yukina was connected not only by the death of her parents. Her sincere desire to master the magic of resurrection spoke for itself. She was truly compassionate. She was a truly brave girl and genuinely justified the honorable title of a wise person. The more Aerys thought about her unwavering determination, the more he wanted her to be near. He sincerely believed that as soon as she fully revealed her extraordinary talent, she would become an invaluable ally to them, because she was exactly what his dream needed to defeat the Demon King. With a bunch of important thoughts in his head, he cautiously asked if she would like to officially join their party. He invited her to his team, assuring her that together they could defeat the Demon King and fulfill her dream to travel the world in search of ancient artifacts. Collecting magical tones from all over the world perfectly matched Yukina's aspirations, so he considered it a good idea. Although she admitted that the offer was good, she politely declined him, and when asked why exactly, she said that she simply was not suited for hero parties. She preferred to act alone rather than in a group. Aerys politely nodded and smiled slightly. Creating a party is far from always easy. She felt a chill. In every clash with powerful monsters, there was a high chance of parting forever, that is, losing a comrade, and they were even talking about the Demon Lord himself. This only strengthened her resolve. Over the last 1,000 years, countless squads boldly challenged the armies of the Demon Lords, but each time ended in defeat and ruin. Aura, hearing this, digging into herself, finally revealed the truth. She was sincerely afraid of losing dear allies and admitted it without hesitation. She said that although she believed Aerys's party would not disappear so easily, a deep anxiety still did not let her go. He reluctantly admitted that a newcomer would hardly survive in a direct fight with the Demon King. He said decisively that he would prove they do not take reckless risks. Celia intervened and said, "I will do everything to impress Yukina and convince her to join their group." Aerys also suggested that Yukina go with them to see with her own eyes how they complete the tasks, and so she could respond to them more decisively. If they start with you, they will finally be able to take on a rank D quest. The transition from rank E was like another world, much more difficult and honorable, and one member of rank D was roughly equivalent to 10 members of rank E. But Celia still doubted if they were really ready to take on this quest, considering it belonged to the higher D rank. Their difficult task was to destroy 30 salamanders. Cruel lizard-like monsters with strong jaws and powerful legs live on the plains. Even an ordinary group of adventurers could not stand against them. Aerys said decisively that they could not just waste their precious time and strength on weak monsters if they really wanted to show their combined power. It was then that Sulz's voice rang in Arrow's head, addressed to Cohen, who was asking permission to leave that world while she was manifesting. Yukina froze in amazement, seeing that graceful child. Self noted that the street air always refreshes like that, and then greeted Yukina. "Prompt Celia to say that I can track everything anyway, even hiding in the spirit world." Seeing a new person, someone playfully twirled around Yukina, and Yukina asked who that child was. Aerys named her name, introduced herself as a spirit, and gently asked Yukina to be kind to herself. She had gone through a rather difficult period. Although at first Aruz did not dare to show himself before Yukina. He knew he could not hide her forever if he really planned to take Yukina into his team. The scene smoothly shifted to the Bergen forest near the plains, where Aerys indifferently suggested that Celia be the first to neutralize the enemy, and she was immediately surprised by such an unexpected command. She rushed to him and hugged him tightly, desperately objecting to his decision, and this made Aerys blush a little. He knew she could handle it herself, but his heart tightened with anxiety. He feared that nerves would prevent her from showing her best. Yukina, noticing their behavior, quietly whispered to herself and thought that they might be a couple. Still blushing, Aerys quietly and gently promised Celia that they were a team, and he would definitely come to her aid if she ever found herself in danger. His soothing words immediately improved Celia's behavior, and she agreed without hesitation to carry out his order. Soon Celia boldly stood opposite the threatening monster, ready to strike. As soon as the monster sensed her presence, she instantly lunged at the beast, but the enemy dodged a little faster than those from the E-level tasks, so in a simple speed duel Celia was completely losing. However, as a sword saint, she had lightning-fast reflexes and royal instincts. In hand-to-hand combat, everything was decided by one thing: guessing the opponent's next move. Celia's swift reflexes saved her. She managed to dodge the monster's attack, which lunged at her with lightning speed. She, as if waving her hand, effortlessly dealt with them with quick and precise strikes, and Celia finally threw off the terrible salamander. The auras enthusiastically praised her impressive skills, and after such a display of power, it was hard to remain completely silent. He turned to Yukina and asked with interest if she was still surprised and stunned, and she immediately responded with a question: how much did Celia have to train to reach such a level of mastery? To her surprise, he admitted that Celia had started special training only a few days ago, and still had room to grow. This completely shocked Yukina, and then Aerys demonstrated his refined skills and incredible abilities. He explained that their group acted cohesively, always carefully planning before battle, and when Celia cut down enemies with her sword, he quickly destroyed monsters with magic. He estimated that their formidable group together qualified as C-rank adventurers. This meant they could confidently and boldly show their skills against C-rank or even stronger challenges, but when he enthusiastically talked about Yukina's powerful group, she tried to intervene and say something important, but he ignored her words. There was nothing in his mind but an unwavering determination to prove that none of their comrades would die. This directly touched her deepest fear, losing dear allies, and resulted in his carefully thought-out first move. He instantly cast a powerful buff on himself, and at the same moment, unleashed a debuff on the horde of enemies. He was about to release Hellfire, a destructive, powerful version that would cause the fireballs to collide harshly and explode with incredible force. Such a fusion spell usually requires enormous magical energy, which even the most experienced mages cannot gather. However, thanks to his unique harmonious magic, he skillfully altered the very essence of the spell, and this allowed him to unleash its full power on his own. Aerys was consumed by the desire to show Yukina his immense power, so he did not hear her words at all. Although he admitted that they would also suffer, he wisely created a barrier to shield them from the lurking danger and carefully executed his plan. A huge explosion grew, rolled across the entire area, and instantly destroyed all the monsters. However, when the dust from the explosion settled, Aerys turned around to check if Yukina was all right. He suddenly saw she had fainted and fallen to the ground. When Yukina regained consciousness, Aerys, holding her breath, asked if she had really seen him in action. He admitted that he might have overdone it, a bit trying to prove his formidable power to her. She acknowledged Celia's strength, but firmly said that Aerys was on a completely different level. On the other hand, she felt that she did not belong to their company and would only drag everyone down, but Celia intervened without hesitation and confessed that she herself felt like a burden when she first met Aerys, but Yukina replied that Celia's past experience in the party and her rigorous training meant a lot. She was stunned when Aerys said that Celia herself had traveled to meet him. He added that he could see people with true potential and asked Yukina to trust his judgment at least a little. It seemed he had indeed convinced her. He suggested let her try to remove the salamander herself. Yukina agreed without any particular remarks, and she created a glowing magical sphere in her palms. She fired a powerful beam towards the monster, but the first shot did not knock it down, so she instantly fired again to finally finish off the creature. I stand holding my breath and watch as she demonstrates her magical powers. He noticed that both the quantity and quality were high. She had a true natural talent, but she still had room to grow. He explained, usually to master magic, one must train long and persistently and although intuition, gained through hard work, and experience were undoubtedly important, there was also a cunning technique hidden here. Then he used the same magical powers and techniques as she did, and released a much more powerful strike that easily destroyed several salamanders in one blow. He took the formidable claws of the fallen monsters as proof of the hunt, and barely suppressing a smile, explained that he had left the initial magical power at the same level as hers, and even added a few refined techniques. Yukina gaped in surprise when she saw the magical force shield, 3 times larger than her own. Step by step, he explained the technique so she could understand everything. He started with fire beams and said that complex magic is actually a combination of simple spells, but a significant part of the magical power is lost in the process. So if they strengthen this connection, losses can be easily eliminated. She instantly grasped his explanation and added that during transformation, almost 70 of the initial power is lost, but Aerys was confident that it would withstand all that magic and make it almost 3 times stronger. She considered it just theoretical assumptions and anxiously doubted whether it would work in practice at all. He answered her directly, without hints. She could simply use bond magic so that the spells would smoothly combine. Then she clarified whether he would activate it additionally and if it would increase magic consumption. But he objected. With a flick of his finger, he summoned a tiny spark of fire and explained that it does not instill fire or water in you, but only uses part of the magic needed for ignition. But when she asked about the exact combination of bond magic, his answer simply amazed her. He briefly said that he considered it simple magic. He added that in his previous group, the participants already expected that several people would cast buffs as if it was a completely ordinary thing. Then Self politely intervened and reminded the embarrassed women that it was like turning the usual, almost magical common sense upside down. He picked up a stick, drew it across the ground, and quickly sketched a simple human silhouette to show that complex magical scheme inside, and explained that it can be imagined as a binary system, where 1 means activity and 0 means inactivity. He continued, all magic can be entirely built from simple combinations of 0s and 1s, and with each new branch, they could actually just turn on and off individual segments. Finally, she understood that complex idea, and with a sparkle in her eyes, whispered that theoretically magic would have 48,816 combinations if the number of branches increased. But her face twisted when she realized that with only 10 branches there are over 1,000 combinations, and with 20 over 1,000,000, and as if all magic boils down to these tangled combinations. A spark of determination flashed in her eyes, and she hurriedly flipped through the pages of the book. Then, having just grasped the idea of binary combinations of 0s and 1s, she tried all the magical spells. Her face lit up with delight when she realized that now she could master countless programs and that the possibilities were almost limitless, and it reminded Aerys that she really was the smart daughter of a scientist. Then, with a slight tremor in her voice, she asked to confirm whether it was already unnecessary to collect spellbooks for resurrection magic. But Aerys gently refused and said that what he had deciphered was only a part of how magic really works. And especially when it came to ancient magic, some things still puzzled him. To demonstrate the power of binding magic, he carefully drew lines of 0s and 1s on the ground and advised her to try this exact order first. When Yukina agreed, she cast 2 simple spells and flawlessly applied binding magic, connecting them as she was taught. Then she unleashed a barrage of large, fierce fireballs. She created a giant explosion that had never been achieved before. Excitement lit up her face when she realized she could control her true powers, and shortly after she cleared the entire area of fearsome monsters. While they were returning, Aerys sincerely thanked Yukina for the necessary help, and she modestly said that she owed him a favor because she would have done it twice as long by herself. She hesitated a little and quietly asked if she would be allowed to officially join their group. Their faces immediately lit up with joy. Celia hugged her tightly and joyfully. When she jokingly said, "Now I have a new mom," Aerys warmly welcomed her at their party, and Yukina resolutely assured them that she would do everything possible to help. At the guild house, the receptionist was genuinely surprised. Yukina, who had previously been very reluctant to join a team, finally joined one, and meanwhile Celia happily said that he really had a talent for attracting people. The receptionist looked closely at the claws they returned with. They were proof of their hunt, but although sufficient, they seemed a bit weak to her. But Yukina admitted that the magic she was taught was so strong that it accidentally melted that. Here are the remains of those terrible salamanders. The administrator at the reception praised Aerys as a truly outstanding instructor, but casually added that both Celia and Yukina were also remarkably talented. Thanks to this, they learned much faster. He believed that a narrow perspective could never truly reveal a person's full talent. If you only look at what is close, you won't notice the distant moon, but by removing your own attention limitations, you can clearly see even the faraway moon, and Yukina considered this comparison amazing. She even asked if they had already decided on the party's name, and he admitted that they had not yet chosen a suitable name. Keep that in mind. After long deliberation, Aerys decisively and quickly registered the name of their party Infinity. After some time they finally ate, and Aerys asked about her accommodation, and Yukina quietly replied that in the morning she had no money to extend it. Celia without hesitation offered her to temporarily live in their room. Hearing this, Yukina asked with surprise if they were really going to live in the same room. When she looked at him with a curious gaze, he, stammering, said that it was only because of Celia's persistence. "You wanted this so much, but I still agreed to stay." The arrest thought to himself, they definitely need to move to a bigger sun. At that moment, suspicious people in hoodies suddenly approached them and said that Yukina had supposedly lost the guild card. But when she checked, everything immediately became clear it was not hers. To their surprise, the figures suddenly lunged at Celia and held her hostage, pressing a knife to her neck. One of the threatening men sharply ordered Aerys to raise his hands and quietly approach. Aerys asked why they suddenly appeared. Yukina quietly replied that those bandits might be trading guild cards on the black market, and seeing that her words struck a chord, the bandit admitted that Yukina was quite observant. She casually remarked, "It's obvious only a person with someone else's guild card could conduct such suspicious dealings." Aerys instantly remembered that boy and thought they had come to avenge their fallen comrade, but the thug cut in, saying she understood nothing about it. He realized that the boy was just a pawn, intended to be used and discarded. And what happened to him did not concern him at all. He growled that they had gotten into big trouble, but Aerys, with a face devoid of any worry, calmly said they would be ready for the consequences of running a shadow business in the capital. The hooligan got even angrier when he declared he could simply sell Rasu 2 fine women to cover their losses. They insisted that Evers would surely regret making them his enemies, but Evers calmly replied that in fact they themselves had made a critical mistake. At that moment, Celia and Yukina respectively regained their sword and magical power. They swiftly detained the bandits without any resistance. Their bewildered leader was stunned by the women's instant reaction, while Aerys quietly sneaked up from behind and grabbed him. And saying that Celia and Yukina were simply too strong for his men, he tightly tied all three with a rope and ordered Celia to call the royal guard. Meanwhile, the leader, without hesitation, offered Aerys a higher salary than the guild gave if he joined them. But it turned out that Hears received absolutely nothing from the guild for his actions. In fact, Aerys decided to prefer a peaceful society without a black market and underground trade. And he also said that he works for his own benefit and principles, not just for money. Shortly after arriving at the Celia tavern, unable to hold back, she asked why Aerys did not help her when the bandit took her hostage, and he replied that he thought she could handle it herself and did not need his help. But the powdered expression still froze on her face. She slyly steered the conversation in another direction. In RIS, it was announced, the time has come to discuss how to distribute the rewards. Yukina replied that the rules for calculating contributions were confusing, and usually they divided rewards according to how much each person did. Harris thought that although the damage dealt often favors offensive roles, support roles according to his principles should also receive a decent reward. To keep everything fair, Risk said he would allocate 10 for party expenses and divide the rest equally among themselves. Yukina immediately rushed to oppose his decision, saying with a flash of indignation that it would be completely unfair to him. He definitely contributed much more in battle. Even after such a decision, he received more than when he was on the hero team. And Aerys simply replied, "Everything will eventually balance out if they both become equally strong." His words ignited them. The two women felt a surge of motivation and decided to work hard side by side. Moreover, Aerys suggested that, as group members, they should pay for accommodation together and consider moving to a new, larger tavern. At that moment, Yukina sharply pointed at the crib and hurriedly asked if Aerys and Celia really slept in the same crib. Celia answered affirmatively without hesitation. She also said that in her sleep, he pressed so tightly against her that she could barely break free, and at the same time, she still could not get over the fact that he really acted that way while she was asleep. Meanwhile, Yukina comfortably settled on the velvet couch and smiled, confessing that she had not experienced such a lively night and such an energetic day for a long time. Aerys gently stroked her head, but he immediately felt an angry look on himself, and when he met Celia's eyes, the words scattered. He could not say anything to justify his action. Jealous of Yukina, she flopped onto the folding bed and unexpectedly asked him to stroke her the same way, and he stood confused. Having no choice, he settled between them. Their soft bodies immediately pressed against him, and he instantly blushed with shame. The next morning, Yukina greeted him, and noticing the expression on his face, said that it seemed he had rested little that night. Only Aerys knew the truth that troubled him and did not allow him to rest properly. Soon they reached the dining hall, where a large crowd had gathered. A note hung on the gates. "The dining hall is closed due to a serious shortage of supplies." As soon as Aerys entered inside, he immediately felt a terrible stench that enveloped everything around. They moved on and discovered that the entire stock of ingredients had spoiled, and the chef said that all the food had gone bad overnight. As soon as Yukina saw the spoiled food, she instantly understood it happened because of a magic violation. Sometimes natural magic in the earth would erupt into chaos, and there was a high probability that it would accidentally turn into decay magic. When Aerys took a closer look at the pantry, he could not believe his eyes. The entire stock had spoiled overnight. Everyone was surprised when Orst picked up the rotten apple and tried to bite it. This completely embarrassed Celia, and Yukina, seeing this, advised her to look more closely. She could not believe her eyes. The rotten apple miraculously became fresh. Aerys suddenly realized that he could use his skill of restoration and enchantment to return the food to the state of the previous night when it was still fresh, and with one smooth motion, the entire spoiled area instantly restored to its previous appearance. The faces of the cooks, which a moment ago were gloomy, instantly blossomed with genuine joy. He sincerely thanked, and when asked how he could repay, Aerys simply said that truly delicious food would be the best reward for their efforts, but he had exhausted his life energy so much that he was noticeably staggering and barely standing, so Celia and Yukina quickly came over to help. Yukina firmly said that after such a powerful spell, his magical reserves were clearly depleted, so she advised him to eat nutritious food and rest well to recover quickly. St. Numadiatnid, the cook, decisively ordered his colleagues to immediately help him prepare simple restorative dishes without any delicacies. After some time, they comfortably settled at the dining table, and Yukina noticed with slight surprise that even Aerys could exhaust magic, to which he modestly replied that he was human too, just like them. He sincerely begged the chief not to tell anyone that he had miraculously revived the ingredients, but the chief only smiled and said that this was a great opportunity to become famous. Meanwhile, Celia, puffing out his chest, proudly said that it was his modesty that made him so incredibly cool. Aerys explained in a heavy voice that if the widespread magical disruption really had engulfed the entire area, it was most likely in extremely bad condition, and he was not at all capable of restoring everything on his own. The cook also agreed to keep silent about what had happened, and when everyone finally left the dining hall, Yukina said in despair that she could not believe all the ingredients had spoiled at the same time. Moreover, he admitted that the magical disruption had greatly troubled him. The magical rebellion of the earth was perceived as a harbinger of a magical catastrophe. It would likely cause serious consequences. When they approached the guild house, surprisingly all the members were already there, and the receptionist with a joyful smile reported that Eurus had easily restored the spoiled ingredients and that clear traces of magical enchantment had been detected. He froze in shock, could not believe that everyone had suddenly found out about his enchantment magic. Suddenly, one of the members whispered that he had heard Rumorsa, new sorcerer, would be joining the hero squad. And Erida immediately seized the opportunity. She exclaimed that the man was a true wizard and temporarily avoided trouble. Then he quickly turned to his comrades and resolutely suggested that they immediately look for new requests. He felt a lightness in his chest. Someone had already taken his place in the hero party, and now he would finally be free from constant pursuit by his former companions. No sooner had they stepped inside than they were struck by how strangely few application forms were on the wall, and they allowed guessed that this could have happened due to a recent magical disturbance. Although when Aerys reached for the form, everyone heard it aloud. That ominous third one from outside, which completely surprised them. Aerys immediately rushed to check the commotion, but nothing was visible through the dense crowd. They decided to go upstairs and observe from there, and he was in complete horror. He came across a newly built cage for gorillas, above which hung a sinister timer counting down the time. The terrible consequence: if the magical barrier breaks in 3 hours, monsters will fill the entire village. Ari looked bitterly. It was the same type of dungeon that tragically appeared in his hometown 6 years ago. Although the hero and reinforcements from the capital eventually suppressed it, this happened only after the entire village was turned to ruins. This time Aerys decided first and foremost to evacuate everyone, because he sincerely wanted to save every life. He quickly devised a plan to evacuate everyone to the neighboring village within the crucial 3 hours. When Celia and Yukina set off, he activated his detection magic and anxiously scanned the entire vicinity with it, and instantly gave everyone noticeably greater movement speed. Suddenly, lightness rolled through the group, filling them with energy and making them run much faster. Stunned, Yukina asked if he really cast that powerful spell on everyone, and Aerys replied that such a level of magical load was no problem for him. 6 years ago, he decided, if this tragedy repeats, he will do everything to prevent it at any cost. At that very moment, the receptionist appeared, and with tension in his voice, warned about the sudden appearance of a dungeon, asking to send a hunting party, although everyone knew Aerys' group would go. He admitted that they did not want to be just a hunting party, they aimed to act as an advanced squad. Impressed by his bold request, she doubted whether he really wanted to act alone and advised him not to take risks, even if he had great powers. He explained that these monsters do not gather in crowds, they have to face them one by one, so he concluded that a small elite team is much more effective than assembling a large ordinary hunting party. Moreover, he also said that he was not really alone, hinting that his dear comrades Celia and Yukina would support him. The administrator asked them to be careful, and meanwhile Joris ordered his people to quickly bring all the necessary potions. He was just about to push through the crowd to offer help to his surprise. Suddenly his former comrades appeared, and Nardo said that civilians would follow their example, but Yukina sharply interrupted, saying there was no such rule and that they had not yet received any specific orders from the capital. With a confident look, Naruto declared, "They are the ones in command." Irritated by his cheeky remark, Risk sharply called him incredible for still rating himself so highly, and added that in fact they were the ones ahead. Nardo sharply responded, throwing accusations at them that they selfishly wanted to take all the credit for themselves. Then he resolutely declared that he would immediately go to the dungeon if that was really the case. But the others wisely calmed Naruto down. "Don't rush, we haven't even prepared enough supplies yet." Despite everything, Nardo decisively ordered his comrades to move forward and enter the dungeon. As they were leaving, Yukina said that the hero team would truly be ashamed to fall behind in conquering the dungeon, and Aerys sincerely pitied the new blessing mage, who was now assigned to support them. Meanwhile, deep in the dungeon, the hero squad was engaged in a fierce, chaotic battle with terrible monsters, and Nardo exclaimed in despair that the damage they were suffering was as if they were completely defenseless. He fiercely demanded an explanation of what was happening, to which the new mage replied that he was giving all his strength, and his enhancement magic was fully active, but Nardo instinctively noticed that Eurus had always done much more than he was able to now. Another participant sharply intervened, advising Nardo not to argue with his comrade, and sternly warned that if he carelessly let down his guard, he would definitely suffer. Thanks to their joint desperate vigilance, the group, combining their various skills and magical abilities, defeated the monsters inside while they fought recklessly. Nardo managed to corner the terrible creature and immediately ordered Crayoni to use her powerful offensive magic. But she was already busy healing another wounded comrade, giving him her precious magic. The creature suddenly swung its giant tail and threw Nardo to the ground. Meanwhile, Cranon, with tension in his voice, reported that they had completely run out of magical power. The new member doubted, did they even have an antidote, because the bacillus poison was a deadly toxin that mercilessly counted down the time. Due to carelessness, Nard allowed a drop of saliva from the camouflage monster dripping in front of him to get on his bare arm, which caused a strong reaction and rapid swelling. He desperately begged someone to give him the antidote, Macraner said worriedly that they had completely run out of healing potions and wisely suggested leaving the dungeon immediately. Moreover, the new mage sighed. If he had known about such serious consequences, he would have brought more supplies. Soon, Aerys's party confidently entered the dungeon, and Yukina quietly whispered that she hoped the party of heroes would not complain upon seeing them. Aerys replied that they simply could not afford to complain. At that moment, the dungeon was shaken by a monstrous roar that immediately alerted everyone present. Moving further, they were petrified. The heroes were in much worse condition than before, and nearby stood a terrible basilisk. Aerys admitted they really should have come a little earlier. Activating his magic circle, Aerys instantly fired a piercing fire shot and released a blazing beam at the creature that completely immobilized it. Celia and Yukina again enthusiastically praised his powerful skills, while his former party members remained stunned and speechless. Seeing this, Prana angrily called him unfair. He secretly left the party, and now boasts such impressive offensive magic. He calmly repeated the same harsh words that Nardo threw at him, and coldly added, "The decision has already been made, no explanations." He was fired. He also admitted that Flame Pearson Shot is an advanced way of using blessed magic, which he first tried after exile. When he pulled a vital healing potion from the inventory slot, he said it was exactly what they desperately needed at this critical moment. Seeing the antidote, Nardo's face lit up with great joy. I know it's a stupid question, but did Urs foresee this situation in advance and prepare those necessary potions? Risk briefly explained that the partisan dungeon was a place completely cut off from the world, where magic quickly depleted, and most monsters were aggressively elemental. Also, when potions ran out, they could be struck by deadly poisoning or paralysis, and simple treatment would hardly help, so they would remain dangerously immobile. With a firm expression, he admitted, it was his first time stepping into this dungeon, and the environment and combat techniques of the inhabitants were completely foreign to him. Next, I suggested they act prudently in everything they did. Then he sharply gestured to move forward and clearly showed the direction of the exit portal. To his surprise, Nardo addressed him directly. His voice was sincere and warm as he emphasized that he truly counted on him. Aerys never imagined he would ever hear such words from Nardo. He thought that Nardo had probably finally faced reality and therefore suddenly became so frank. Aerys assured him in a decisive tone, "Take everything under your care." When they were walking, Celia desperately wanted to know if Eurus had already predicted the exact characteristics and types of monsters in that dungeon, but Eurus apologized to both of them for dragging them into such a dangerous situation. He sincerely worried that the once world-famous team of heroes had ended up in such a state. Yukina grumbled, "They are so obsessed with appearances that they can't even protect their teammates." But Aerys calmly replied that these were still his old familiar places. Yukina was taken aback. She realized that he was really from the same party of heroes, and Aerys suddenly realized he had never truly told her about it. He immediately apologized to Yukina, sincerely asking forgiveness if his past somehow made her feel uncomfortable. However, she calmly replied that she rather felt relief because he was a stranger like her, and that she liked him just as he was, not only because he was a hero. Aerys's face noticeably flushed from her words, her cheeks reddened, and she, embarrassed, hastily clarified that she meant a person. Suddenly Celia appeared between them, and both of them shuddered from the surprise. He pointed forward with his hand and said that there were many doors at their destination. Walking past that multitude of doors, Celia asked if it was possible to just hastily open any of them, but Aerys frankly shared her opinion. Simultaneously, she activated the area scanning skill, and it instantly detected a swarm of dangerous monsters lurking behind those doors. Yukina thought they definitely won't make it if they open all the doors, so she advised to keep going for now. They moved a little further and suddenly found themselves in front of impressive doors with several keyholes. It seemed to them that the dungeon boss was hiding even deeper behind this formidable barrier, and to reach the doors, they would need many keys. The large number of lock holes spoke for itself. The keys were deliberately hidden behind those numerous doors, one in each. Celia told Alv that they would have to defeat the monsters at each gate, and just as they started moving there, Aerys instantly stopped them. He accidentally tugged on Yukina's belt, and she blushed, immediately hissing at him not to grab her in such places. Since they needed to collect only 20 keys, Aerys firmly explained that they did not have time for such a lengthy process. The simple method did not work, and it was hopeless even to ask if there was some hidden way to open those doors. But Aerys showed it was much simpler than they imagined. Forming a powerful magical circle, he released a huge explosion of fire directly at the massive doors and instantly blasted them apart with pure force. Meanwhile, Celia and Yukina were mostly bewildered by his action. They did not expect him to use such brute force, and when the doors opened, a formidable dragon appeared before them. Without wasting a second, Aristocler instantly drew the attention of the dragon. An order was immediately given, Celia to attack from behind, and Yukina skillfully to support them from the rear. The massive maw of the dragon opened wide and unleashed a powerful stream of fire that engulfed everything around, while Aerys instantly appeared behind it and fired an accurate, piercing fire shot. Yes, truly a formidable beast, but not a single scratch remained on its extraordinarily hard scales. As ordered, Celia came out from behind and her strong sword hit the monster precisely. But at the moment when Aerys was enhancing her abilities, the dragon cunningly took advantage of the opportunity and instantly grabbed her while she was distracted. Panic-stricken, Aerys instantly gathered herself for another desperate attack, but Yukina's voice sharply commanded Celia to dodge. Releasing a powerful attacking magic at the dragon in one moment, Celia escaped, while Draydenly was wounded. When the beast froze for a moment on the ground, Aerys took the opportunity, rushed forward, and delivered a precise strike, and the mighty dragon was finally defeated. The news of their victory spread throughout the district, and they stood outside, sighing with relief the dungeon was finally cleared. Meanwhile, Aerys simultaneously cast a soothing recovery and spell on them. Yukina proudly said that this was undoubtedly the fastest record in Aerys's history. She passed this difficult dungeon simply lightning fast. He smiled warmly and said that he definitely did not do it alone. The three of them did it together, acting in harmony. He admitted that if it weren't for Celia, who precisely aimed at Dragon's scale spots, he would not have noticed her weakness. If timely help had not arrived, Yukina Celia confessed she would have been torn to pieces. Yukina, stammering, modestly said that she did nothing special, just attacked from behind, but Aerys still praised her for the important help, and Yukina's cheeks instantly flushed with embarrassment. He once again emphatically stressed, in the dungeon, magic dissipated extraordinarily quickly. Hardly any adventurers were found who could effectively attack with magic from such a distance. He gently took her hand and offered a healing spell, and she skillfully and sincerely thanked him. Jealous of their closeness, Celia instantly squeezed between them and clung tightly to Aerys, dramatically holding on because she felt pain and desperately needed his immediate help. Meanwhile, Yukina could not hold back from the lively energy of their bright party. She quietly giggled. She quietly spoke to her deceased parents, mentally feeling that she could really get along well with them, and at that moment something suddenly appeared from somewhere. She gently thanked both her mothers, Celia and Yukina, for allowing her to go outside. It seemed that everyone had already been successfully evacuated from the village. A joking thought flashed through her mind that now she could finally steal anything she wanted, but Celia quickly scolded her for such thoughts. Aerys also thought that, for a person who seemed like an innocent child, such thoughts appeared egocentric and dangerous. When she noticed how closely they were standing, she joked with a smile that auras had successfully stolen the hearts of her mothers, and he, blushing, explained that their closeness was simply an effective way of magical recovery. She also told him, if it was normal for Celia, then for Yukina it was too rough. Her face was blazing red like a beet, but he convinced himself that it could be due to exhaustion from magical energy depletion. Then Yukina suddenly turned around and, smiling a little, assured him that she was fine now, and Aerys explained to Sulf that there really was some distance between him and Yukina. Celia said he is hopelessly distracted. He thought to himself, cooperation with Yukina was only for their common goals. That day, after they conquered the infamous partisan dungeon, hope flared in their hearts another important step toward the great goal, restoring peace in the world. He decided that together with Celia and Yukina, he must continue to grow in order to eventually defeat the mighty demon king. Meanwhile, the royal guards whispered in the corner of the village. Some guessed that the party of heroes probably had to retreat. Others suggested simply reporting everything immediately to the palace. The scene smoothly shifted to the royal palace of the Kingdom of Men, where the respected king, Floyd's husband, proposed appointing a new ideal hero, one who would truly become unique for their nation. The minister said, even if they are heroes of the Alliance, finding adventures that surpass them is a real challenge. Floyd confidently said, it has already been proven such extraordinary people really existed. 3 days after the victory over the dangerous partisan dungeon, Horace's group entered the bustling market, and the shop owner immediately recognized them as true heroes who overcame the recent crisis. She came closer and quietly asked, are you really a former hero? Should I keep this secret? And at that moment, Aerys realized that almost everyone had already guessed about his past. Then Celia asked for 4 loaves of bread, and when the shop owner saw her, she was obviously impressed and immediately called her a beauty. People kept asking if she was Arrow's girl, which clearly embarrassed him, but Celia calmly dismissed the assumption and proudly introduced herself as the sword Saiyan of the group. Hearing this, the lady generously gave her the whole bag of bread instead of 4 loaves, and immediately Celius's face lit up with joy. Another seller, smiling, said that the village seemed to have miraculously come to life thanks to their heroic efforts, and even the fruits had become much juicier. Yukina, as always scholarly, confidently explained that the closure of the dungeon significantly stabilized the local magical flow, and the merchant, impressed by her deep knowledge, praised her and asked who she was. Aerys came out and proudly introduced her as Wise, saying that she made a great contribution to the group's recent success, and the seller was delighted to hear this. He quickly handed her his juiciest fruits as a sign of gratitude, and immediately shop owners and sellers throughout the market showered them with gifts and sincere words of thanks. Both Celia and Yukina were clearly basking in the attention and gratitude they received, and another seller said. Nardo's group looked like they confidently passed through the village, but when the decisive moment to help came they suddenly retreated. Another added that Harris's group was much more reliable. The entire market buzzed with sincere gratitude, together thanking them for their timely and decisive help. Later, when they finally broke through the huge crowd, he sighed deeply with relief. What prompted Yukina to ask if he was tired? He said he had never experienced anything like this before, so public attention was foreign to him, and when they arrived at the guild house, the administrator immediately apologized for calling so abruptly just when he was supposed to rest, but Eurus calmly replied that 3 days were quite enough and asked what the urgent matter was. She announced that she had an important letter specifically for Aerys and ordered him to go to the inner room. At that moment, Aerys felt that his past as a former hero had come out. Now everyone knew about him. While the receptionist led them, Celia quietly noted that usually no one was allowed there. But at the reception they cut in. This was their private office. She informed the group that after they quickly completed the quest in the dungeon the day before, they received a letter directly from the capital. The delivery was so unusually fast that there was no doubt it was clearly from a carrier pigeon, so it turned out to be extremely important for them. When Aerys asked who it was from, she said it was a letter from King Floyd of the Kingdom of Men, and it really impressed him. When he skimmed through the letter, it clearly stated that the king himself congratulated them on the lightning-fast and decisive conquest of the dungeon, and the letter also said that the allied hero party would be disbanded, and simultaneously, a separate hero party would be created for the Kingdom of Men. The most important thing, it exclaimed, the honorable leader of the new party of heroes will be Aerys, full-raced and self. Celia and Yukina blossomed with joy upon hearing about this achievement. It seemed to them that their incredible feats in the dungeon were finally officially recognized. Self also appeared nearby, and with a slight smile said that although she was not very knowledgeable in such matters, it really sounded impressive. The receptionist said that with such incredible achievements it was quite logical, but it was still impressive that the king personally nominated Arrow. Celia said she did not understand why create a completely new party if you can just add Aerys to the current one. Yukina said that this party was only a coalition, essentially a multinational army funded by neighboring countries. But due to the prolonged absence of major battles with the mighty Demon King, fewer and fewer countries agreed to provide financial support. And eventually there was a severe shortage of money and inevitably fewer talented adventurers. Since then everything went awry. 6 years ago a partisan dungeon appeared in Aerys's hometown. Because natural disasters could happen anywhere, aid to the victims was prioritized over conquering the Demon King, and countries rushed to invest resources in their most urgent needs. The receptionist added, the allied party of heroes was abandoned after the recent retreat from the dungeon, and it seems the king decisively decided to create a separate, independent party of heroes solely for the defense of the kingdom. Celia finally seemed to realize how serious everything was, and proudly declared that the time of Aerys had come, and Aerys reluctantly called it a very positive interpretation. Besides, he said that his true goal was still to defeat the mighty Demon King, and joining the party of heroes was only a temporary distraction. The respondent admitted that painful memories of that old party of heroes were extremely hard to get out of his head. The administrator suspected that something was clearly bothering him. To her surprise, Aerys asked if there was even the slightest chance to refuse the prestigious nomination to the new party of heroes, and she clarified whether he meant refusing the leadership. He explained that he meant becoming a hero in general, and this revelation stunned everyone in the room, leaving a deep silence. She was still shocked and stammering, replied that refusing a royal decree had never happened before, and Celia and Yukina desperately tried to convince him, saying that refusing such an honor would be a great loss. Yet he still had to participate, despite obvious hesitation. Meanwhile, Aerys was confused, not knowing how to explain all his complex feelings to everyone. Meanwhile, in the great audience hall of the Kingdom of Men, gathered Gaius Sheffield, Farah Forrest, Silas Istria, and Miguel Bro. Previously, they were chosen as new honorary heroes of the kingdom of men. Sometimes even the king himself did this. Then Floyd raised the question about the leader of the party. Gaius instantly calmed him and confidently said he would handle it easily. He had led the A-rank team for years and had no doubt about his leadership abilities. Floyd said quietly but firmly that the leader had already been finally chosen, although he was not there at that moment. Gallius immediately apologized for the mistake and instantly asked who the leader was. Floyd replied that it turned out to be none other than Aerys Falle. Gallius immediately recognized in him the very experienced spellcaster from the former party of heroes and was clearly surprised, while Floyd smiled and noted that although it had not been officially announced yet, he had heard that Aurys single-handedly conquered the partisan dungeon. Floyd proudly said that even after he stopped being a hero, Aerys persistently tried to save people, and his spirit and natural strength were truly extraordinary, and Floyd was confident that Aerys fully deserved such an honorable title. Suddenly Gallius was covered in cold sweat. He realized that the leader of the party of heroes had enormous power. He knew that under the direct name of the king, the leader would be granted colossal power and influence both within the party and beyond it. Gallius could not understand why he was not chosen, although everyone knew his skill, and for years he had led squads to success. It was humiliating for him to go out on that big stage and work under the command of some guy named Arrest. He firmly believed, if he had been the first to come across the dungeon, he would undoubtedly have been chosen as the leader, not Russ, and meanwhile fear asked itself whether the group leader could change later. Floyd replied that although he was not considering this topic right now, it sometimes surfaced in judicial discussions once every few years. Then he announced that in a few days Aerys would arrive at the capital and officially join them, so he ordered everyone to stay in standby until then. Gallius was boiling with indignation more and more. It seemed to him that the king was simply using the retreat of the previous group of heroes as a convenient excuse and overestimated Aerys too much. It was bitter for him to think, if Aerys simply did not exist, the king would have to choose him for the position. Just having left the capital's limits, a sinister plan to get rid of Aerys was maturing in his head, although he still did not know who he really was.